Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of Ooh's unwritten laws, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical, seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. The land of Ooh, at first glance, feels like a place ruled by chaos. 1,000 tiny kingdoms rise and fall across its rolling hills and melting horizons. Candy people chatter under the glow of neon moons, while flame creatures sing beneath rivers of lava. The wind hums through broken ruins that whisper of the old world. And yet within this apparent disorder, something steady breathes beneath it all, something like balance, quiet, invisible, and impossibly ancient. Ooh has no written constitution, no councils that decide the rules of coexistence. Yet somehow it endures. Kingdoms quarrel, rulers vanish, but the land remains alive and harmonious in its own strange rhythm. Maybe it's because Ooh itself remembers. The soil has seen the world end and begin again. The rivers have carried magic through every rebirth, and the people, if they can still be called people, seem to carry within them an unspoken understanding of how to live here. When you look closely, it's as though every being in Ooh obeys a silent pattern. The fire kingdom burns brightly, but never spreads beyond its molten borders. The candy kingdom, sweet and soft, thrives not through strength, but through trust. The ice kingdom broods in its solitude, disturbing no one. Even the wild things of the forests and the plains, tree witches, talking mountains, and those strange floating entities that wander at dusk, all move according to unseen boundaries. No one tells them to, yet they do. Perhaps these are not rules written down, but instincts woven into the fabric of existence. Maybe it's the land itself that whispers to them, "Stay here, not there. Do this, not that. Speak gently, not loudly." In Ooh, even chaos has manners. Even madness knows its measure. It's tempting to think of Ooh as a world constantly teetering on the edge of collapse. After all, it was born from the ashes of the Great Mushroom War, a cataclysm that tore the world apart and reshaped it into something unrecognizable. Yet after the fire and fallout, life didn't end. It shifted, mutated, learned to breathe differently. And in that rebirth, the world seemed to set its own quiet laws. The first of these might be called the law of balance. Every bit of light has its shadow, and every burst of magic demands something in return. When a new kingdom forms somewhere else, another begins to fade. When one creature grows stronger, another softens or sleeps. It's not fairness, it's equilibrium. The same way tides pull against the shore, Ooh's forces push and yield to each other in endless rhythm. Think of Princess Bubblegum's reign. Her rule seems peaceful, logical, structured. But it only works because something out there, perhaps the wild, unpredictable spirit of the Flame Kingdom, keeps her perfection from freezing into tyranny. And in turn, the chaos of fire is softened by the sweetness of candy, preventing destruction from consuming all. Each force, each realm, each ruler, they all act as counterweights to one another, creating a kind of invisible harmony. Even Finn and Jake, in their endless adventures, seem bound to this balance. Whenever they intervene too strongly, whenever they try to fix Ooh, the world reminds them to slow down, to let things unfold naturally, to listen. Their adventures often end not with victory, but with understanding. Because in Ooh, balance isn't something you enforce, it's something you honor. If you listen closely to the way the world of Ooh breathes, you'll notice how nothing truly disappears. Old magic lingers in forgotten corners, waiting to be found. Lost cities sink beneath new kingdoms, but their echoes shape the ones that come after. Even the ruins of the pre-war world remain, shimmering faintly under the dirt and grass, like sleeping memories. It's as though refuses to let anything die completely. Instead, it recycles everything. Memories, magic, even souls, turning destruction into renewal. This quiet recycling may be the oldest law of all, not moral, not written, but natural. A rule of survival through transformation. When the old world ended, didn't mourn, it adapted. It made something beautiful and bizarre out of the wreckage. And so every creature that lives there inherits this same instinct, to change, but never to forget what came before. When you look at landscapes, the glowing deserts, the mushroom forests, the seas that hum softly with forgotten technology, you can almost feel that memory humming under the surface, as if the land itself keeps watch, ensuring that even the wildest experiments of magic or creation never stray too far from harmony. There's something deeply comforting in that, because it means that beneath every strange creature, every talking cloud or cursed sword, there's an underlying promise. The world knows what it's doing. It may look absurd, even dangerous, but every chaos in has a purpose. Every storm eventually finds its stillness. And maybe that's why the people of whether they're made of candy, fire, ice, or dreams, rarely question the way things are. They live by feel, not decree. They sense when to act, when to yield, when to hide, and when to heal. They don't write their laws on parchment. They carry them in their hearts, in their instincts, in the way they wake with the sun and sleep when the magic fades from the sky. Because in the land of to survive is not to conquer, it's to flow, to move with the world rather than against it. And those who forget that, those who try to bend to their will, often find the world bending them instead. Even the greatest sorcerers have learned this lesson. Magic in is not a tool, it's a tide. You can ride it, you can listen to it, but you cannot command it. The land's quiet balance resists control, like water slipping through clenched fingers. Perhaps that's why the truly wise in the princesses, the wizards, even the cosmic beings, learn to rule not through dominance, but through understanding. They know that unwritten laws are not meant to be enforced. They're meant to be respected, because when one forgets that respect, when a creature takes too much or gives too little, the balance begins to hum with unease, and the world, in its own subtle way, begins to correct itself. It begins quietly, this correction, never as punishment, but as a soft reminder, a spell that fades, a kingdom that begins to crumble at its edges, a ruler who suddenly feels the weight of their own crown. In imbalance isn't met with fury. It's met with stillness. The world simply stops cooperating until harmony is restored. You can see this pattern in so many stories. When Princess Bubblegum tried to perfect her citizens, to shape them into an ideal version of her vision, the world responded not with rebellion from outside, but from within. Her own creations began to think, to question, to reject the flawless order she tried to impose. Gumball's folly echoed the same truth. When creation turns into control, quietly reshapes the outcome. It twists intentions until they resemble balance again, however strange that new form may be. Even Ice King's tragedy fits this law. His madness was not simply a curse of the crown, but a kind of exchange. To wield ancient ice magic, to command the frozen elements, he had to surrender part of himself. In every gift comes with a giving. And though Simon lost his mind, the world never abandoned him. His loneliness became its own strange harmony, a reminder that even brokenness has a place in the cycle. It's easy to forget that itself is a living thing. Beneath its bright skies and shifting landscapes, There's an awareness that hums through every stone and spell. You can feel it when Finn stands on a hill at sunrise, when the wind carries faint whispers from unseen forests. That hum is Oo's heartbeat, slow, patient, forgiving. It doesn't seek perfection, only balance. There's a gentle poetry in how even the smallest things in Ooh reflect this idea. The way magic mushrooms glow only in certain phases of the moon. The way rain falls softer over the Candy Kingdom than over the Ice Kingdom, as though the weather itself understands fragility. The way certain creatures appear only when the world is ready to receive them, like comets that streak through the sky at exact moments in history, bringing both ruin and renewal. If you could listen closely enough, perhaps you'd hear the quiet conversations happening between all these things. The candy grass whispering to the fireflies, the rivers murmuring secrets to the ancient machines buried beneath their currents. It's a constant, unseen dialogue, Ooh speaking to itself, keeping its own balance alive. Maybe that's what draws people like Finn and Jake into adventure after adventure. They're not just exploring for the thrill, they're participating in this larger rhythm. Each quest, each encounter, feels like part of a song that the world is singing. Sometimes it's playful, sometimes sorrowful, but always purposeful. When Finn steps into an abandoned ruin, he's not just trespassing on history, he's helping it breathe again. When Jake stretches across a canyon or naps under the stars, he's embodying the very flexibility that Ooh seems to cherish. Their lives, though small in the cosmic scale, echo the same unwritten laws that govern gods and monsters alike. And perhaps that's what keeps Ooh from falling apart. Not the strength of its rulers, not the might of its magic, but this shared understanding that every being is part of something larger, something delicate. Even those who resist it end up woven into it eventually. Magic that seeks power is absorbed back into the soil. Ambition that burns too brightly fades into myth. Nothing escapes the flow. Some say the cosmic owl represents this quiet enforcement, a dream-bound messenger who ensures fate unfolds as it should. His appearances aren't warnings or punishments. They're gentle adjustments, like wind nudging a falling leaf toward its rightful landing. In dreams, Ooh reminds its children of where they belong. Others whisper about the time room and the great being known as Prismo, another keeper of equilibrium. Prismo doesn't command, he grants. He gives what is asked, but always with consequence, because balance demands it. Every wish carries a ripple, and every ripple finds its opposite. Even desire itself in Ooh is regulated by unseen harmony. And this harmony doesn't just exist in grand cosmic spaces. It lives in the quiet corners and the way BMO hums to itself when alone, and how Marceline's songs seem to soothe the world's old wounds. They don't fix Ooh, they comfort it. They remind it to breathe. When you think about it like that, chaos starts to look less like disorder and more like conversation, a language that only the patient can understand. What seems random or senseless in Ooh is often just part of a pattern too vast to see up close. Every strange creature, every absurd event, every shimmering anomaly in the sky is a syllable in that language. And Ooh speaks softly. It doesn't shout its laws or carve them in stone. It lets you feel them in the warmth of fire that doesn't burn too far, in the sweetness that doesn't spoil, in the frost that preserves even as it freezes. Its laws are emotional, almost spiritual, carried through intuition rather than intellect. Those who live longest in O seem to know this instinctively. They listen before they act. They observe before they interfere. They sense when a place is sacred, when a creature must not be disturbed, when a silence must be left unbroken. The wise in Ooh understand that the world isn't waiting to be ruled. It's waiting to be understood. Because somewhere beneath the laughter and chaos, beneath the ruins and rebirths, the land of Ooh is always whispering the same simple truth. Everything belongs, so long as it remembers its place in the dance. That dance is what keeps the world breathing. Every step, every rise and fall, every flicker of creation and decay, it all becomes part of the same gentle rhythm. And if you listen closely, it feels almost like a lullaby written into the landscape. The wind carries the verses, the rivers hum the tune, and the stars above keep time. The people of Ooh, whether they know it or not, all dance to that rhythm. When Flame Princess holds her temper long enough to protect rather than destroy, she follows it. When Tree Trunks bakes an apple pie for no reason other than kindness, she follows it. When Marceline lets go of anger and allows a song to speak her pain, she too moves with the music. Even the smallest act's a kind gesture, a moment of restraint. A quiet apology become little steps in Ooh's unending choreography. But there are moments when that rhythm stumbles, when greed, obsession, or fear begin to overpower the natural balance. Ooh grows restless. The skies shift in color. The ground hums with unease. Creatures become unpredictable. It's as if the world itself grows anxious, trying to realign the melody before it unravels completely. These disturbances are never random. They're lessons, reminders that the world can only remain alive through gentle cooperation. The mushroom war long ago was perhaps the greatest dissonance in that song, a single, violent note that shattered harmony. Yet instead of ending everything, Ooh responded with transformation. It didn't erase the past. It grew around it. Magic seeped into the scars, and new life took root in the ruins. The wasteland turned into wonderland, and the radiation into radiant energy. The world didn't reject chaos, it absorbed it, teaching itself to sing differently. That is Ooh's resilience, not denial of destruction, but harmony with it. Sometimes you can see this law reflected in Finn's own journey. He begins as a hero who believes in fighting monsters, saving kingdoms, and fixing problems. But as he matures, he learns that Ooh doesn't always need saving. Some things are meant to unfold on their own. He learns to help when he must, but also to let go when the world whispers, "Not now." Finn's growth mirrors the deeper wisdom of the land that true strength lies not in control, but in trust. There's something poetic about how Ooh rewards gentleness. Those who move softly tend to thrive. The grass grows higher where feet tread lightly. The air around calm hearts seems to shimmer with faint magic. Even the animals, who might seem wild or chaotic, respond to kindness with curiosity rather than fear. It's as if the world itself recognizes tenderness as a form of alignment. Of course, not everyone listens. There are those who resist Ooh's quiet order, those who think the world can be remade by force or willpower alone. Magic users who attempt to bend the elements to their desires often meet the same fate. The spell turns on them, reshaping their intent into something else entirely. The magic man, for instance, who once sought to mock the world's meaninglessness, became trapped in his own cycle of lessons. His cruelty returned as isolation, his laughter as silence. The world didn't hate him, it simply balanced him. Even the cosmic beings play by these subtle rules. The lich represents absolute stillness, the desire for an end to all movement, all life. And yet, Ooh always finds a way to transform him, to fold his essence back into the song. Whether as the seed, sweet pea, or some future form, the lich's presence never vanishes completely. It simply becomes part of the melody's darker harmony. That's the power of Ooh's unwritten order. Nothing is ever wasted, not even evil. It all becomes texture, necessary for the world to keep evolving. There's a quiet comfort in that, isn't there? Knowing that even ruin serves a purpose, that every broken piece eventually becomes part of a new whole. Ooh doesn't fear its own scars. It wears them like jewelry, glimmering reminders of where it's been. The cracked towers, the melted clocks, the haunted valleys, they all hum with life because they've been forgiven by time. If you were to walk through Ooh at night, when the moons are bright and the air feels still, you might sense this forgiveness in the air. The silence isn't emptiness, it's peace, the kind that comes when everything has found its rightful place. You'd see the glow of faraway kingdoms, hear the faint laughter of spirits drifting between trees, and realize that beneath all the oddities the world feels content. Perfectly, serenely content. That serenity is Oo's truest law. Not peace in the absence of conflict, but peace that lives through it. A balance so deep that even chaos becomes part of the calm. When you stand still long enough in that world, you begin to feel it, the gentle hum beneath your feet. The pulse of magic that connects all things. It's not something you can define or measure, but it's there, wrapping everything in quiet understanding. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Ooh has endured through war, mutation, and madness. Because the laws that hold it together don't depend on power or perfection. They depend on awareness. The creatures of Ooh, from the smallest candy child to the greatest elemental, each play their part in maintaining that awareness. They know when to take, when to give, and when to rest. Even the stars above seem to follow the same rhythm, shining and fading in their own cycles, never competing, only complementing one another. Everything in Ooh, from the deepest cavern to the highest tower, is connected by this thread of quiet cooperation. It's invisible, but undeniable, a network of unspoken understanding that hums beneath every heartbeat. The gentle order beneath the chaos is not a system or structure. It's a feeling, a shared heartbeat between everything that exists. And once you begin to sense it, the world stops feeling like a mystery and starts feeling like a dream that knows you by name. Some say that this quiet awareness is the reason why Ooh feels so alive, because it is alive. Every mountain and river, every cloud and spark of magic seems to possess its own consciousness, its own small piece of the world's memory. The land doesn't just host its inhabitants, it listens to them, learns from them, and adjusts its rhythm to their stories. When one kingdom falls, another doesn't simply replace it. It grows from its ashes, shaped by what came before. In Ooh, nothing truly ends. It merely transforms, finding a new way to exist within the song. You can almost imagine the spirits of old kings and lost creatures drifting through the forest at twilight, not haunting but humming, adding their voices to the eternal harmony. The wind carries fragments of their laughter, and the trees bend gently as if bowing in recognition. Even time seems to slow in those moments, allowing the world to breathe between heartbeats. That's when Ooh feels most at peace, not in stillness, but in soft continuation. There's a reason the land never truly unites under one rule. Whenever someone tries to gather too much control, the edges of their influence begin to crumble. Power in Ooh is like sand, it slips away if gripped too tightly. The world encourages diversity, difference, contradiction. Each kingdom, no matter how strange, exists to balance the others. The Candy Kingdom's sweetness offsets the Fire Kingdom's fury. The calm melancholy of the Ice Kingdom cools the wild joy of the Tree Folk. Even the Nightosphere, a dimension of chaos and hunger, serves a purpose. It reminds Ooh that darkness must exist so that light can mean something. If Ooh had a single law written in its soil, it might be this: harmony is not sameness. Everything that thrives here does so because it dares to be unique, yet never forgets its connection to everything else. The grass doesn't envy the sky. The flame doesn't despise the ocean. They coexist, knowing that each needs the other to define itself. The creatures of ooze seem to understand this instinctively. They may bicker, fight, or even declare war, but underneath it all, they share an invisible loyalty to the balance that keeps them alive. Sometimes when Finn or Jake pause at the end of a long adventure, you can see them noticing it, that strange feeling that even their failures matter. The quest they couldn't finish, the monster they couldn't defeat, the friend they couldn't save, all of it becomes part of the larger harmony. The lesson of Ooh isn't about triumph, but participation. To live there is to add your note to the melody, knowing that it will echo long after you're gone. Even the stars seem to remember. When comets streak across the sky, harbingers of change and reincarnation, they mark the turning of Oo's eternal wheel. Each impact, each awakening, is both an ending and a beginning. Life folds into itself, and from that folding, something new and unexpected always arises. The world doesn't fight the cycle, it celebrates it. This might be why dreams play such an important role in Ooh. When the cosmic owl visits sleeping minds, when BMO drifts through surreal dreamscapes, when magic itself whispers to those half awake, these are moments when the veil between the physical and the spiritual world grows thin. Ooh communicates through dreams because dreams are the purest form of harmony. They let the mind wander without boundaries, reminding all who sleep that nothing in this world is truly separate. If you stood at the edge of Ooh, looking out across its strange and endless terrain, you might see how this harmony expresses itself. Far beyond the kingdoms, the land shifts between realities, places where the laws of physics bend, where islands float, and shadows move like living things. Yet even there, the same balance hums. The closer you look, the more you realize that Oo's chaos is just harmony viewed from too near. From a distance, it's all one vast, shimmering pattern, a living mosaic of contradictions that somehow fit together perfectly. It's easy to forget that this world rose from humanity's own mistakes, from a war that scorched the earth and poisoned the air. But Oo's miracle lies in how it turned that destruction into possibility. The remnants of human technology became seeds for new magic. The ruins became homes for new life. Even humanity's ghosts found ways to laugh again through descendants like Finn. Ooh took the worst thing imaginable and sang it into something beautiful. That is the gentle order beneath the chaos, not an order built by rules or rulers, but one born from compassion, resilience, and patience. It's the understanding that balance doesn't mean control, and that even imperfection has a role to play. It's the quiet assurance that everything, every sound, every silence, every spark of life belongs exactly where it is. And maybe that's why, no matter how strange or frightening Ooh can seem, it always feels like home. There's a tenderness in its unpredictability, a kindness in its madness. The land breathes, dreams, forgives, and continues. Always. The candy people will rebuild, the forests will grow back, and the skies will keep shifting colors long after anyone remembers why. Because Oo's true strength isn't its magic or its kingdoms, it's its memory. The world remembers how to live no matter what tries to destroy it, and in that memory lies the quiet promise that even in chaos, there will always be balance. So when night falls across the land of O, when the torches dim and the kingdoms drift into sleep, the laws of the world continue their slow, unseen work. The stars realign, the rivers hum softly, and the heartbeat of the land steadies once more. Everything, every creature, and every story settles back into place, part of the same endless, gentle rhythm. And beneath the silence, U whispers to itself not words, but a feeling, a lullaby of balance, love, and endless renewal. The sound of chaos at peace with itself. The sound of life remembering how to dream. The land of U is stitched together like a patchwork quilt, a world of kingdoms that shimmer side by side, each one beating to its own strange rhythm. There's the molten glow of the Fire Kingdom, the pastel sweetness of the Candy Kingdom, the icy silence of Simon's domain, and the dreamlike wilderness that stretches endlessly between them. None of these places truly blend, and yet they coexist, not through treaties or armies, but through something quieter, a natural understanding that every kingdom must know how close to come and when to step back. It's one of U's most mysterious laws, the law of coexistence and distance. Not a rule you can read, not something anyone enforces, but something every creature seems to feel, an instinct written into the air itself. The Fire Kingdom does not flow outward into the green plains because even its flames recognize where they shouldn't touch. The Candy Kingdom doesn't claim the wild forest because it knows sweetness can only thrive when danger still exists somewhere nearby. This is what keeps U from collapsing into chaos, invisible boundaries that hold the world in quiet balance. The people of OU don't speak about these boundaries, yet they live by them every day. They can sense when they've wandered too far, when a place feels heavy with a different kind of magic, when the land beneath their feet changes its tone. U has many voices, and each one deserves its own space to sing. When Finn and Jake travel across the land, they pass through these invisible thresholds all the time. One moment, the air smells like sugar and sunlight. The next, it burns with sulfur and smoke. Yet there's rarely a clash between these realms. It's as if each one carries an unspoken respect for the next, a quiet nod between neighbors who understand that peace depends not just on kindness, but on distance. Princess Bubblegum knows this better than anyone. Her kingdom thrives because she understands limits. She builds walls, but not out of fear, out of balance. Her people are fragile, delicate, made of joy and innocence. To protect that softness, she keeps the wildness of U at bay, not by force, but by quiet design. She doesn't seek to rule the world, only to keep her corner of it alive, and in return, the world respects her boundaries. Then there's the Fire Kingdom, a realm of intensity and instinct, ruled by heat, emotion, and pride. Fire Princess's world is beautiful in its danger. The walls of her palace glow like embers, the rivers shimmer with molten gold, and the sky burns in shades of red that never cool. Yet even she understands restraint. Her flames could devour U if they wished, but they don't, because fire in U has learned to know its place. It knows that passion without space becomes destruction. Even the Ice Kingdom, frozen, lonely and vast, obeys this law. It sits apart, draped in stillness. No one tries to conquer its cold peaks, and Simon, the Ice King, rarely strays too far beyond them. His isolation isn't a curse. It's part of the design. In his solitude, the world finds balance. His sadness cools the world's fever. His stillness keeps the chaos from growing too loud. He is, in his own strange way, a guardian of distance. Between these kingdoms lies the wilderness, the endless green, dotted with ruins, forests, and creatures that don't belong to any ruler. This wild expanse is where U breathes most freely. It's the space that keeps everything else from pressing too close, a soft buffer between powers. And perhaps that's what makes the land of U feel alive, not its kingdoms, but the space between them. The law of coexistence is not about unity, it's about respect. Each being, each element, each kingdom has its own essence, its own energy that must be allowed to exist without interference. When that balance is broken, When one force reaches too far, the world begins to unravel. You can see this in the wars that once flared between the elements, when fire sought to consume, when candy tried to colonize, when ice froze too deep into the heart of life. Each attempt to dominate ended the same way in collapse, until the land itself restored its boundaries once more. Sometimes, U reminds its children of these limits through quiet corrections. A sudden storm rising between two kingdoms, a flood washing away bridges that crossed where they shouldn't, a volcano that sleeps for centuries, then wakes when the world forgets its perimeter. The land's own body enforces the law when its people forget it. This doesn't come from cruelty, but compassion. The land is teaching its inhabitants to listen, to understand that closeness without care becomes suffocation, and distance without empathy becomes loneliness. Coexistence in U lives between those two extremes, a dance of nearness and withdrawal, warmth and space. Think of the friendship between Finn and Flame Princess. It was beautiful but fragile. Two souls drawn together from worlds that could never truly merge. Their love burned bright but couldn't last. And yet it wasn't tragedy that ended it. It was understanding. Flame Princess learned that her power thrived when given room to breathe. And Finn learned that love doesn't always mean possession. Sometimes love means standing back and letting the other exist freely. U itself seems to live by that lesson. It allows connection, but guards individuality. Every river, every kingdom, every creature plays its role without being swallowed by another's identity. The sky doesn't envy the earth, nor does the ocean try to drown the land. Each element knows its boundaries, and through that, harmony survives. Even in the strangest parts of U, where magic runs wild, where dimensions twist into each other, the same principle applies. Chaos respects chaos. The nightosphere doesn't spill endlessly into the waking world because it understands that separation keeps both realms alive. The dream realm visits, but it never lingers. The cosmos itself seems to lean on this rhythm, together yet apart, connected yet distinct. That is U's second great truth, that distance is not disconnection. It is the space where peace can live. The land of U breathes in patterns, closeness and distance, together and apart, harmony and solitude. Every creature, whether they know it or not, is shaped by this pulse. The tree fort where Finn and Jake live sits right on one of these boundaries, a quiet midpoint between worlds. It's not quite a kingdom, not entirely wild. It stands like a bridge, a home between extremes where candy and flame, magic and nature can all cross paths safely. Maybe that's why their home feels so alive. Doesn't belong to any ruler or system. It's a meeting place, a reminder that boundaries don't always mean walls. Sometimes they're just gentle edges, soft enough to touch, firm enough to keep the world from breaking. When you look at the friendships across U between Finn and Marceline, Bubblegum and Peppermint Butler, Ice King and Gunter, you begin to see that this law of coexistence isn't about separation, but balance. Each relationship carries its own distance, its own way of honoring individuality. Take Marceline, for instance. She drifts through U like a melody, never tied down to one place or one rule. She visits the Candy Kingdom, the Fire Kingdom, even the desolate Ice Mountains, but never stays too long. Her presence is a kind of harmony in motion. She reminds others that relationships in U are not defined by borders, but by the space between a respectful distance that allows love, friendship, and even sorrow to breathe. It's fascinating how that pattern reflects in U's physical shape. Each kingdom is distinct visually, emotionally, even spiritually. The Candy Kingdom glows with warm, artificial light, humming with science and structure. The Fire Kingdom burns with intensity, every flicker unpredictable. The Ice Kingdom, silent and vast, hums like a lonely lullaby. And between them lie the natural lands, rivers, forests, deserts, acting like arteries that connect everything, but also keep them apart enough to survive. If these lands ever merged completely, would collapse under its own energy. Too much sweetness would melt under too much heat. Too much ice would freeze the rivers that feed life. So keeps them dancing, always near but never fused. It's the same quiet rhythm you find in magic itself. Magic in is not owned, not contained. It flows, respecting unseen currents. Peppermint Butler knows this. His strange mix of dark arts and candy logic only works because he doesn't try to dominate magic. He treats it like a living thing that must be handled gently, with distance and reverence. When that distance is broken, when mortals try to control too much magic, always responds with imbalance. The laws of nature reassert themselves, gently but firmly, reminding everyone that coexistence depends on knowing when to step back. There's something deeply human in that idea. The people of though many are not human at all, carry in their hearts the same lesson the land teaches. You can love without consuming. You can protect without imprisoning. You can live beside others without becoming them. Even Finn learns this through his journeys. As a hero, his instinct is to fix, to fight, to rush in, but teaches him patience. Some problems can't be solved with action. They need space. Some wounds can't be healed by closeness. They need quiet. Over time, Finn learns that true peace in isn't about victory, it's about harmony. And harmony needs room to echo. When we think of kingdoms, we often imagine rulers, laws, and armies. But in the greatest law is one that no one enforces a mutual understanding among beings who've seen too much chaos to risk it again. After the Mushroom War, when the world was broken and reshaped, perhaps this was first new law. A shared instinct among survivors. Never let the world fall into domination again. Let every part of it live freely, side by side, never forcing one rhythm over another. Maybe that's why feels peaceful, even in its madness. It's a fragile peace, yes, but one born from deep wisdom. Every creature, from the smallest candy person to the oldest cosmic being, plays their role in this quiet symphony of boundaries. They may not call it law, but they follow it because somewhere deep within, they know it's what keeps the land alive. It's also what allows growth. When two forces stay just far enough apart, they inspire each other from a distance. Fire lights up the night sky, but doesn't scorch it. Ice cools the world without killing warmth. Candy flourishes because it's not overrun by magic, and magic thrives because it's not drowned in order. Even the nightosphere and the living world share this understanding. Marceline's father, Hunson Abadir, could easily let his dimensions spill into but he doesn't. Perhaps he understands the cost that too much chaos destroys meaning, and that true power comes from restraint. The two realms visit each other like distant relatives, curious, respectful, careful not to stay too long. Is full of such boundaries, thin veils between life and dream, life and death, light and shadow. You can cross them if you're brave or foolish, but you must always remember to return. Those who forget those who stay too long in someone else's world lose themselves. It's why the creatures of seem to move in cycles. They approach, they retreat, they return again, always shifting, always respecting the space that keeps them whole. In even silence follows this law. The spaces between sound, between laughter in the Candy Kingdom, the crackle of fire in Flame Princess's halls, the wind over Ice King's peaks, all of it breathes with quiet respect for the in-between. Every pause, every gap feels sacred, because is not just made of kingdoms and creatures. It's made of space, of distance that gives meaning to everything that fills it. This rhythm stretches even into time itself. The past, present, and future coexist like neighbors who can see each other through their windows but rarely cross the fence. Ancient magic still lingers in ooze soil, whispering beneath the ruins of forgotten kingdoms. Yet it doesn't smother the present. The new world grows on top of the old, never erasing it completely, only layering gently. That's why ruins are everywhere in broken skyscrapers in the grasslands, sunken machines sleeping beneath the sea, old roads swallowed by moss. They're not eyesores, they're boundaries of memory. The world doesn't destroy what came before, it simply lets it rest. The Candy Kingdom doesn't bulldoze the past. The Fire Kingdom doesn't melt it away. Instead, the people of Ooh build beside it, above it, around it, always leaving space for memory to breathe. There's a tenderness to that kind of coexistence. It shows how even a world rebuilt from apocalypse can choose gentleness over control. Every creature in Ooh seems to understand this, from the smallest snail who quietly waves in every episode, to the great elemental beings who shaped reality. They all exist in a web of awareness that too much interference unravels the thread. Consider the elementals, candy, ice, fire, and slime. Each one embodies a core part of Ooh's nature. And though their powers are vast, they too are bound by distance. When the elementals draw too close, their energies distort everything around them. Candy spreads unchecked, freezing and melting mix. Chaos reigns. But when they live apart, each in their own quiet corner, Ooh remains balanced. It's as though the land itself insists that diversity can only thrive through separation. Princess Bubblegum once learned this the hard way. Her desire to perfect her kingdom, to make it safe and orderly, led her to tighten her grip, to control, to calculate, to fix every flaw. But that kind of closeness, that refusal to let go, began to smother what made her people alive. They grew complacent, fearful, dependent. It wasn't until she learned to trust, to step back, and allow imperfection, that her kingdom truly flourished again. Coexistence needs trust, and trust needs distance. Even the relationship between humans and magic echoes this truth. Long ago, before the Mushroom War, humankind built its world too close to its power. Technology and greed erased the space that once kept balance intact. The explosion that followed wasn't just physical. It was the breaking of this law. Afterward, the world healed by rediscovering its boundaries, magic, and life learning to exist side by side once more, but never in total unity. The result was Ooh, a mosaic of harmony born from respectful distance. There's a quiet wisdom in that healing. It's as if the land itself decided that separation was not punishment, but protection. Just as rivers carve their own paths without asking permission, every kingdom and creature in Ooh follows its natural boundary, its quiet promise to the world: I will exist, but I will not consume. You can even feel this in the relationships that define the show. Finn and Jake share deep brotherhood, yet even they learn to respect space. Jake has his own adventures, his own family, his own slow pace. Finn, restless and searching, often wanders alone. Their love doesn't weaken because of it. It grows stronger. Their distance allows each to discover who they are, so that when they meet again, they meet as whole beings. This pattern repeats endlessly in Ooh. Marceline and Bubblegum, bound by history and affection, drift apart for years, only to reconnect when the time is right. They don't force closeness. They wait for it to return naturally. Even the lich Ooh's embodiment of death obeys this law in a twisted way. He doesn't linger everywhere at once. He waits, patient and distant, appearing only where imbalance invites him. He understands in his own dark fashion that the void must keep its distance from life to preserve meaning. Perhaps this is Oo's greatest unspoken wisdom, that peace does not come from merging, but from honoring boundaries, from knowing where one being ends and another begins, from letting difference exist without fear. And yet, these boundaries aren't walls of isolation. They are alive, shifting, breathing. Sometimes they blur just enough for something magical to pass through a friendship between kingdoms, a song that travels across borders, a spark of curiosity that connects two unlikely souls. The balance isn't static. It's a dance, and Ooh dances beautifully. When the Fire Kingdom's heat warms the edge of the Candy Kingdom's sky, it doesn't destroy, it glows. When Ice King's winds sweep softly over the plains, they bring calm, not frost. When Bubblegum sends aid to a distant land, she does so without control. These are moments when coexistence leans forward, touches, and then retreats again, leaving harmony in its wake. The people of Ooh seem to understand that relationships, like ecosystems, need room, that too much closeness can blur identity and too much distance can wither connection. Between the two lies the secret path where kingdoms can share light without burning, and where silence can speak louder than control. And maybe that's why, despite all its strangeness, Ooh feels peaceful. Its chaos hums but softly. Its kingdoms differ wildly, yet rarely collide, because they're all held together by this invisible rhythm, a pulse that whispers the same message across every boundary. Stay close enough to care, but far enough to let each other live. It's a rule written not in law books, but in the soil, the wind, the flow of lava, the shimmer of ice. A truth older than any ruler, wiser than any hero. The law of coexistence and distance. Oo's quiet promise to itself that life, to remain beautiful, must always leave room to breathe. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The hum of Oo's heartbeat, steady and slow, pulsing through its vast and varied lands. It's there in the stillness between waves, in the sigh of trees that border the Fire Kingdom's deserts, in the shimmering air above Ice King's lonely towers. Every sound, every pause, every gentle transition between one realm and another, it all belongs to the same quiet rhythm, a rhythm that says, we are many, and that is how we remain whole. This understanding runs deeper than words or reason. It's something instinctive, like gravity or breath. Every being in Ooh seems to feel it, even if they can't name it. When a flame person steps too close to the forest, they pause not out of fear, but out of awareness. When a candy person drifts too far from the safety of their walls, something in them whispers that it's time to turn back. These are not conscious choices, but subtle echoes of the world's own design, Oo's memory, living inside its people. And maybe that's what gives the land its harmony. The kingdoms don't simply coexist through luck or tolerance. They coexist because something older than all of them remembers what happens when balance is broken. The Mushroom War shattered that memory, once erased it, replaced it with chaos and ruin. But when the new world rose from the ashes, that old wisdom returned, softer, humbler, but more powerful than ever. It wasn't written in stone or decree, it was written in the behavior of life itself. You can see it in how Ooh rebuilds. The ruins of human cities were not cleared away. The forests simply grew around them. The rivers carved through highways, the moss-covered machines. The animals made homes in forgotten corners. It's as if the world were saying, we'll move forward, but we'll never erase what came before. And that's coexistence too, living with your own past without letting it consume your present. In that way, Ooh teaches something deeply gentle. It teaches that peace doesn't mean everyone must become the same. It means learning how to exist side by side without erasing the other, to live with difference, not against it. Even the most chaotic forces in Ooh seem to know this. Magic Man, for example, exists as an agent of chaos, bending reality, testing others. But even he never destroys everything. He breaks to teach. He disrupts, so the world remembers to value order. Even chaos in Ooh has its boundaries. And when those boundaries blur too much, when kingdoms collide or the balance falters, Ooh doesn't punish, it corrects, softly but firmly. The land shifts, nature reclaims, magic withdraws, and peace returns like a slow tide. There's no judgment in that rhythm, only patience. It's as though Ooh trusts that everything will find its distance again in time. Somewhere in that trust lies Ooh's deepest wisdom, that true harmony can't be forced. It must be allowed. Princess Bubblegum can't demand peace. The Fire Kingdom can't burn its way to understanding. Even Finn, for all his courage and heart, learns that sometimes the best way to help is to let things be, to give them time, space, silence. This quiet philosophy stretches beyond kingdoms and creatures. It shapes how the very energy of Ooh flows. The ley lines of magic that run beneath the ground don't surge in straight paths. They weave, curve, breathe. They never crowd each other. They share power by leaving room. When Peppermint Butler studies these flows, he finds that magic itself obeys the same principle. When forced together, it collapses. When given space, it sings. Even the cosmic beings, those vast forces that watch over Ooh from beyond, seem to understand this. Prismo, existing in his time room, lives apart from the world, yet touches it gently through dreams. Death waits quietly in his own realm, visiting only when balance calls for him. Life and death, Prismo and the Lich, all of them hold their places in the grand pattern without trying to overstep. Their restraint is what keeps the universe whole. It's humbling, isn't it? To think that an entire world thrives not because of control, but because of restraint, because of the willingness to not cross certain lines. The creatures of Ooh may be strange, wild, unpredictable, but they live by an ancient courtesy that humans in the old world once forgot. The courtesy of distance. When we look at Ooh through that lens, we realize that its peace is not passive, it's deliberate. The Candy Kingdom could expand. The Fire Kingdom could conquer. The Ice Kingdom could freeze. Yet none of them do. Because they've learned that survival is not about domination, but coexistence. That the most powerful act isn't to claim more, but to stop. And that's what makes Ooh so beautifully dreamlike. Every corner of it hums with individuality, and yet, when you step back, it feels like one living, breathing being. A patchwork heart beating under a shared sky. Fire burns, but doesn't invade. Ice chills, but doesn't suffocate. Candy glows, but doesn't blind. Everything shines just. In the end, the law of coexistence and distance is not just a rule of nature. It's a way of living. A reminder that balance doesn't come from sameness, but from space. From allowing contrast, contradiction, and individuality to exist together without collapsing into conflict. It's what keeps Ooh's fragile peace intact. And perhaps that's why, when night falls over the land, when the fires dim, the candy lights flicker out, and the wind quiets across the snow feels so serene. Every kingdom rests in its place, every creature in its own rhythm. The stars above watch over a world that remembers its boundaries, honors its differences, and finds beauty not in control, but in distance. That is the unspoken law that keeps Ooh alive, the soft heartbeat beneath its chaos. The truth that peace is not the absence of separation, but the presence of understanding, and somewhere beneath all the strange laughter and quiet sorrow, the world whispers that same old promise to itself once more. Stay near enough to love, but far enough to last. Magic in isn't something that can be contained or fully understood. It flows through the land like a soft current, beneath everything unseen, but always felt. It hums in the air, it whispers in the trees, it glows faintly under the skin of the earth. Every living thing, from the simplest blade of grass to the oldest wizard, carries a touch of it. But just as real and just as sacred is mortality, that gentle reminder that all things in have a beginning and an end. The world survives because these two forces, magic and mortality, never try to erase each other. They move together in quiet balance. And there's a kind of poetry in that idea. Magic is the dream, the infinite. Mortality is the boundary, the breath. One gives the world its wonder. The other gives it meaning. Without magic, would be hollow, a husk of science and structure. Without mortality, it would become endless and still, a place without growth or change. Together, they create the rhythm that keeps alive, the eternal and the fleeting, side by side. We see this balance play out through the lives of people. Take Princess Bubblegum, for instance. She was born of science, molded from candy, yet she wields knowledge so profound that it blurs into sorcery. She has studied the structure of life, the code of existence, and in doing so touched the edge of magic itself. But her power is grounded in logic, in creation through understanding. She represents the mortal mind reaching toward the infinite, yet never fully crossing into it. Then there's Simon Petrikov, the man who became the Ice King. His story is the opposite, a mortal who stepped too far into the realm of magic. The crown he found granted him endless power, but it also took away his humanity. His magic made him eternal, but at the cost of memory, warmth, and self. Simon became proof that when magic forgets mortality, it unravels the soul. It's not that the crown was evil, it simply ignored the natural balance. It gave him what no mortal was meant to have, endless life without grounding. And yet, even in his tragedy, there's something deeply beautiful about Simon's story. Because the Ice King still carried pieces of his old self faint, flickering fragments of kindness, loneliness, and love. Those emotions were his last threads of mortality, reminding him of what magic could never replace. When he finally returns to being Simon, we see the quiet truth at the heart of that humanity, fragile, temporary, uncertain, is not a weakness, but a gift. Magic and mortality weave together not just in people, but in the world itself. The Candy Kingdom is a blend of both an empire born of science, sustained by enchantment. The Fire Kingdom, too, holds this duality. Its flames are magical, yes, but its rulers feel deeply human pain. Even the Nightosphere, with all its chaos and endless life, depends on mortals, give it meaning. Hunson Abadir's realm is vast and immortal, but it's Marceline, half-mortal, half-demon, who brings it warmth. She bridges the infinite and the finite simply by existing. Perhaps that's what makes Marceline so central to balance. She has lived for centuries, carrying the weight of both worlds inside her. She remembers the end of the old world, yet she still feels hunger, love, and sadness. She could have surrendered to immortality completely, let go of all human softness, but she didn't. She sings, she feels, she mourns. Her songs are filled with the ache of living too long, but they're also her anchor reminders that even an immortal needs the fragile pulse of life to stay whole. That same tension lives inside itself. The land is ancient, born from the remnants of the old human world and reshaped by elemental magic. It's both timeless and temporary. Every sunrise feels new, yet every ruin whispers of centuries past. The very air feels aware of its own impermanence, like the world knows it shouldn't last forever. And that's what makes it beautiful. Even the heroes of feel this pull between magic and mortality. Finn, for example, is perhaps the most human being in the entire land, yet he constantly finds himself brushing against the infinite. He battles demons, befriends cosmic entities, and even enters the dream realm. But he always returns home. He always wakes up. Finn represents the mortal heart of Oo, curious, courageous, and finite. His humanity reminds the magical beings around him what it means to live with limits. Jake, on the other hand, leans more toward the magical. His powers defy logic. His body stretches and morphs like a creature born from imagination itself. And yet he too must face mortality. His arc ends not with infinite magic, but with peace, and acceptance that even magical beings have an end. When Jake passes, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like completion, as though the magic within him finally returned to the rhythm it came from. Magic in Oo isn't portrayed as something to worship or control. It's something to live with. It's part of the natural order, no greater and no lesser than death. You can't own it, can't hoard it, can't make it obey forever. Every time someone tries, Oo reminds them of the cost. The Enchiridion, the Magic Man, the various wizards who seek power, all of them learn the same lesson, that magic without humility leads only to emptiness. It's strange how gentle Oo's universe is about these lessons. It doesn't punish, it teaches. When mortals chase too much magic, they lose something of themselves. When magical beings envy mortality, they feel longing, but not bitterness. There's a mutual respect between the two, a quiet acknowledgement that each side makes the other whole. And maybe that's the true secret of Oo's survival. Not technology, not magic, not heroes, but balance, the constant, patient negotiation between what lasts forever and what must end. Without death, there is no growth. Without magic, there is no wonder. Between them lies the delicate thread of existence, humming softly through every creature, every stone, every kingdom, under the strange, glowing sky. The more you look at Oo, the more this balance reveals itself not as a battle, but as a conversation. Magic and mortality don't fight for dominance. They speak to each other softly, like old friends. Each needs the other to remember what it means to exist. Magic without limits drifts into chaos, and mortality without mystery fades into despair. Together, they create something living, something that breathes. We can see this reflected in the strange ways Oo regenerates after destruction. When a kingdom falls, whether by war, decay, or accident, something new always grows in its place. A ruined castle becomes a forest. A burned village turns into fertile ground. The energy that once fueled life doesn't disappear. It transforms. That's magic honoring mortality. It accepts that death is not the end, only the pause between breaths. One of the most touching examples of this is in the story of Fern. He was born from the remnants of Finn's grass sword, a magical creation that gained consciousness, life, and emotion. Fern was powerful but restless. He was made of magic, yet longed for the human heart that Finn possessed. His struggle wasn't one of good versus evil, but of identity. He wanted to live as something real, not just something enchanted. When Fern finally fades, turning into the seed that grows into a great tree, it's not tragedy, it's the natural conclusion of the balance. His death becomes new life. His magic becomes nature. Mortality and eternity fold into each other like a sigh. The world doesn't mourn him with despair. It mourns him with reverence, because he became part of the cycle rather than breaking it. That's how Oo sees endings, not as losses, but as transformations. Even death itself, personified in the calm, skeletal figure known simply as death, is treated not as an enemy, but as a quiet necessity. Death has no malice, no hatred. He doesn't seek or chase, he simply waits. He understands that his role is not to destroy, but to keep the balance steady. In Oo, death is a conversation partner to life, not its opposite. Magic, on the other hand, is portrayed as something mischievous and emotional, unpredictable, but never purely cruel. It's alive, reactive, sensitive to the intentions of those who wield it. Peppermint Butler's experiments often cross the border between genius and danger, but he never seeks immortality for himself. He studies magic as one might study weather with respect, knowing that too much interference can shift the entire balance of the world. It's fascinating how Ooze, beings of great power, all seem to carry this awareness. Hunson Abadir, ruler of the Nightosphere, could have easily imposed his will over the mortal plane, yet he rarely does. He visits, he tempts, he plays, but he doesn't destroy. He knows that chaos needs order to define it. Even his daughter, Marceline, anchors him, her mortal half reminding him of the gentleness his realm lacks. Through her, he stays connected to life, even from across the veil. And then there's Prismo, the wishmaster who exists beyond time. His very existence is a meditation on this balance. He can grant nearly any wish, bending reality itself, yet he remains humble, even lonely. He understands that infinite power means nothing without purpose. His friendship with Jake shows that even the most magical beings long for the warmth of mortality, for companionship, for laughter, for something finite. When you live forever, each moment loses weight. But when you live within limits, every second glows brighter. That's what Oo reminds us through its strange, whimsical tone, that mortality doesn't diminish life, it amplifies it. The world's magic depends on the fleeting. A song means more because it ends. A flower is beautiful because it will wilt. Even stars burn out, and in doing so, give birth to new light. In this way, Oo's entire existence mirrors the heartbeat of the universe, magic expanding endlessly, mortality shaping it into meaning. We see this rhythm reflected in Finn's coming-of-age story. In the beginning, he sees death and aging as distant, frightening things, something to fight or deny. But as he grows, he starts to accept them as part of life's natural flow. His encounters with the dead, with reincarnation, with cosmic beings, they all teach him that existence isn't about clinging to permanence, but about embracing change. Even Jake, his magical brother, becomes a teacher of this truth. Though Jake is born of the cosmic being Joshua and Lady Rainicorn's union, a literal blending of magic and flesh, he never questions his nature. He lives joyfully, aware that his powers are temporary gifts. When his time comes, he meets death with a smile, not fear. His departure feels like the quiet return of a wave to the ocean. That's the harmony Oo celebrates, endings that are not final, just graceful. The more you think about it, the more you realize that Oo itself is a conversation between the eternal and the fragile. The land is filled with timeless energy, the residue of ancient spells, celestial creatures, and post-apocalyptic radiation. But on top of that strange energy grows something soft. Friendship, music, laughter, small acts of kindness. Those little mortal gestures are what give Oo its warmth. Without them, all that magic would feel cold and endless. So the world breathes in both directions, one breath of mystery, one breath of mortality. Together, they make Oo feel alive. When we think of Oo as a living organism, this balance between magic and mortality becomes like its heartbeat, one side pulsing with boundless energy, the other grounding it in impermanence. The magic flows through its veins like sunlight through leaves, and mortality gives shape to that light, allowing it to settle into moments, memories, and emotions. Without this harmony, Oo would either freeze in stillness or dissolve into chaos, but instead it dances imperfectly, beautifully. Look closely. And you'll see how this dance unfolds in small, almost invisible ways. A wizard might cast a spell that saves a village but ages them years in the process. A creature born of pure magic might choose to live a simple, mortal life because love makes it worth the risk of ending. Even the smallest life forms in Ooh seem aware of this rhythm: the candy citizen, the elemental beings, the grass and water spirits. Everything hums with quiet understanding. To live fully is to let go gracefully when the time comes. The Flame Kingdom is a perfect example of this fragile duality. Fire, by its nature, destroys and renews. It consumes, but also clears the way for new growth. Flame Princess herself embodies that truth. Her life has always been a struggle between the chaos she was born from and the peace she longs to create. For her, the balance isn't abstract, it's deeply personal. Each time she loses control, she burns away a part of herself. Each time she learns restraint, she rebuilds what was lost. Through her, we see that even magic can learn humility. In a way, the entire Fire Kingdom operates on this unspoken rule: destruction as purification, rebirth as redemption. It's why their society never fully collapses, despite its volatility. They don't deny chaos. They give it a place. And that's something Ooh as a whole seems to understand instinctively. Every kingdom, every creature, accepts that both chaos and order are sacred. They don't strive to erase one side of the scale, they simply learn to sway with it. This wisdom might be why the world of O has endured so long after the Mushroom War. That ancient apocalypse could have ended everything, and yet it didn't. From the ashes of humanity's mistakes grew something enchanted, something strange and luminous. Magic filled the cracks left by civilization, but mortality lingered too, shaping it, tempering it. The ghosts of the old world became whispers in the new one, teaching its inhabitants to live softly, knowing how fragile peace can be. It's easy to forget that under all the whimsy and color, Ooh is built on ruins. Every mountain may have been a skyscraper once. Every enchanted river might have once been a highway. The very soil hums with ancient echoes of science, technology, and loss. Magic didn't erase that past. It grew around it. Like vines around an old statue, it embraced the decay, turning it into beauty. That act alone is a form of mercy, a promise that even endings can be gentle if the world allows them to transform. Finn often senses this hidden melancholy, even if he doesn't always understand it. There's a softness in how he interacts with relics of the old world. He doesn't treat them as dead things, he treats them as memories. When he stumbles upon a rusted robot or a crumbling city, his curiosity isn't just about discovery, it's about connection. He feels the hum of old life beneath the surface, as if the world itself is telling him stories in a language older than magic. And Jake, ever the dreamer, listens too, but in his own way. His magical flexibility mirrors Ooh's adaptability. He can become anything, fit any shape, bend through impossible spaces. Yet, even he knows that such freedom means little without meaning. His powers are whimsical, yes, but they're also deeply symbolic. They represent what it means to exist between worlds, part magical, part mortal. He never abuses that gift because somewhere inside, Jake understands that even elasticity must have limits, or it loses form entirely. The more you explore Ooh, the clearer it becomes that magic isn't a replacement for life. It's an accent to it. It colors existence, adds texture and wonder, but it's never the essence itself. The essence is still emotion, choice, and impermanence. When Finn holds his friends close, when Marceline sings her aching songs, when Bubblegum hesitates between science and heart, those are mortal moments. Yet somehow, they carry more magic than any spell ever could. That's because emotion is the bridge between the two forces. love, grief, courage. These feelings exist at the crossroads of power and fragility. They can outlast bodies, outshine time, and yet they are born of mortal hearts. In feelings are the purest kind of sorcery. They bind together beings of different origins, humans, candy folk, demons, cosmic entities under a shared truth, that even gods can ache, and even mortals can shine with divine light. And maybe that's why great cosmic beings, never fully dominate the mortal realm. They linger, they influence, but they don't rule. Magic respects life's boundaries because it knows that crossing them would unmake what makes existence meaningful. The Enchiridion, that ancient tome of wisdom, speaks not just to heroism, but to restraint. It reminds those who read it that true power lies not in endlessness, but in balance, in knowing when to act and when to rest. Everything in from the tiniest flame to the vastest galaxy creature, seems to honor this rhythm, this breath between the eternal and the ephemeral. The world's laws are unwritten, but deeply felt. And through those quiet rules, continues to glow softly in the dark, not because it has conquered chaos, but because it has learned to live alongside it. And there's something beautifully humble about the way exists in this quiet equilibrium, a world that has known destruction so complete that it should not have survived, yet does so with a kind of gentle resilience. The balance between magic and mortality isn't written anywhere, but it is lived by everything that breathes, flickers, or even dreams. You can feel it in the sigh of the wind across the Ice Kingdom's frozen plains, in the soft glow of fireflies above the candy forest, in the faint hum of spells that linger long after they've been cast. What's remarkable is that no one in truly questions this balance anymore. It's not a law enforced by rulers or gods. It's simply accepted, like gravity or time. Even the magical beings who could easily dominate the mortal ones rarely seek to upend the natural order. They may cause chaos, play tricks, or test limits, but at their core, they understand that the beauty of existence comes from its impermanence. Magic is wondrous, precisely because it does not last forever. It flickers, it fades, it returns. You can see this truth most clearly in Marceline. Half demon, half vampire, she embodies both the eternal and the finite. She's watched centuries pass, seen empires rise and fall, lovers come and go, and yet, for all her power, her songs are filled with longing, not for immortality, but for connection. Each chord she strums feels like a quiet admission that even endless life is hollow without something fleeting to hold on to. Through her, balance becomes personal again. She reminds us that even in a world of magic, it's the mortal heart that gives meaning to forever. Princess Bubblegum stands on the other side of that spectrum, a being made of science, logic, and deliberate creation. Yet she too drifts between those realms. Her intellect gives her control. Her candy biology grants her resilience, but it's her emotional vulnerability that grounds her. When she tries to impose order through reason alone, her world fractures. When she allows compassion to temper her power, breathes easier. Her evolution is proof that the world's equilibrium depends not just on cosmic forces, but on choices quiet, human choices that ripple outward into eternity. Then there's Simon Petrikov, the tragic mirror of that same balance. Once mortal, now something else entirely, his story reveals what happens when the scale tips too far toward one side. When Simon put on the Ice King's crown, he gained unthinkable magic, but lost the essence of himself. His immortality became a prison. His power, unrestrained by mortality, stripped away the warmth that made him human. Yet even in that tragedy, laws whispered beneath the surface. For in time, even Simon found moments of grace when friendship, music, and memory pierced through the frost. Those moments remind us that mortality always finds its way back into magic, softening it, redeeming it. This duality also lives in the very landscape of There are places steeped in ancient sorcery, the nightosphere, the spirit world, the citadel where time folds and reality blurs. But alongside them exist quiet valleys, small towns, and humble homes where people laugh, sleep, and dream. The proximity of these realms says something profound about Oo's nature. The extraordinary and the ordinary are not opposites, but neighbors. The universe's grandest mysteries share space with breakfast pancakes and lazy afternoon naps. That, too, is balance, the sacred, wrapped gently in the everyday. Even the cosmic entities, those vast and unfathomable beings, seem to bow to this rule. Orgolorg, the Lich, the Catalyst Comet, all carry immense power, yet none of them can completely erase mortality's gentle hand. The Lich tries to end all life, but his existence is always undone by those small, stubborn sparks of humanity. Love, compassion, even foolishness. These mortal qualities undo what pure power cannot. The Catalyst Comet grants purpose, but only through those who live and die to carry its light. And Orgolorg, for all his might, is reborn as Gunter, a penguin, who finds comfort not in conquest, but in companionship. Teaches that this is not weakness, it's design. The mortal heart is what keeps the eternal from collapsing under its own weight. The infinite becomes bearable only when held by the finite. Each sunrise, each friendship, each tiny act of kindness keeps the stars from growing cold. The world's magic needs these moments, like breath. When you listen closely to the silence of it's almost like hearing a lullaby sung by the universe itself. It hums of balance, the warmth of life fading into the cool hush of death, the shimmer of magic giving way to the stillness of sleep. The creatures of don't worship this rhythm. They simply live within it. They've learned somehow that nothing sacred needs to be shouted. And maybe that's the greatest lesson hidden within unwritten laws, that the strength of a world doesn't come from endless power or control, but from harmony. Magic without mortality is empty, and mortality without magic is despair. But together, they create meaning. Together, they create a place where chaos and calm, fire and ice, life and death, all share the same sky. As the night settles deeper and the air grows still, the world feels like it's breathing softly in its sleep. Every glowing tree, every flickering star, every quiet soul in the land of rests beneath that shared truth that existence, in all its strange and beautiful forms, is not about choosing between magic and mortality, but about letting them live hand in hand. And in that gentle balance, the world keeps dreaming endlessly, peacefully, forever in motion, yet somehow always at rest. In the land of bonds are rarely written, yet deeply honored. The world may be scattered with kingdoms, monsters, and magic, but beneath all of that hums a quieter system, a network of relationships that keep everything alive. These are the codes of kinship and creation, invisible understandings that guide how beings connect, protect, and sometimes even hurt one another. Unlike the rules of power or the balance between magic and mortality, these codes are not cosmic in scale. They are intimate. They live in the small gestures in a shared meal, a promise whispered by firelight, a quiet act of forgiveness. They are the things that give shape to Oo's soul. If you look closely, every friendship, every family, every strange bond in this world seems to be tied by these unseen threads. Finn and Jake's brotherhood is perhaps the purest form of it, not by blood, but by heart. They teach us that kinship in doesn't always come from origin, it comes from choice. Jake could have been just a companion, a sidekick in the classic sense. But instead he became the rhythm of Finn's life, his laughter, his wisdom, his soft landing whenever the world felt too heavy. Their connection reveals something about the way Oo defines family. It isn't about structure or lineage. It's about loyal presence. Finn's human side and Jake's magical nature never clash, they complement. Each brings something to the other that the world itself seems to celebrate. The merging of strength and softness, curiosity and calm. Through them, Oo tells us that kinship is not about sameness, but about harmony. This rule extends far beyond just them. Think of Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, two beings whose connection is as old as the ruins that dot their world. They argue, they part ways, they change, and yet they return to each other again and again, like celestial bodies drawn by gravity. Their love, whether quiet or conflicted, shapes how balance exists within Oo's emotional core. It's a relationship that defies time and definition, proving that affection can be both creation and destruction. It can wound, and it can heal. Marceline's music carries that truth in every note. Each song she writes feels like a coded prayer to those she's loved and lost. It's her way of keeping kinship alive across centuries, through melody, through memory. And Bubblegum, ever the scientist, answers in her own way by building, protecting, preserving. Together, they represent how Oo blends emotional truth with creation itself. One sings the past, the other engineers the future, and between them lies the unspoken promise that love, in any form, is the most enduring kind of magic. Even the elemental beings, those ancient forces of nature, follow these hidden codes. They may seem distant, defined by power rather than emotion, yet they too are bound by relationships. The flame elemental, the slime elemental, the ice elemental, and the candy elemental each governs not through dominance, but through an inherited duty. Their creations are their kin. Princess Bubblegum's candy citizens, for example, aren't just inventions. They are extensions of her heart and her fears. She gave them life not merely to rule them, but to fill the silence that once surrounded her. This pattern of creation as companionship runs deep across Oo. Magic itself seems to respond to loneliness. Whenever someone is truly alone, truly aching for a connection, something new is born. When Simon became the Ice King, his madness wasn't just a curse. It was a desperate attempt to create company in an empty, frozen world. His penguins, his imagined princesses, his endless performances, all of them were echoes of that same ache. Oo's magic has a way of answering sorrow with creation, as if to say that no being should endure solitude for too long. Even the smaller creatures of Oo live by this code. Tree Trunk's little family, her husband, her friends, and her unexpected children all embody the idea that kinship doesn't need to make sense to be real. It just needs to be sincere. The Wildberry Kingdom, the goblins, even the Cloud People, they may seem comical, but their societies all mirror this deeper truth. Life survives not through dominance, but through cooperation. Perhaps the most poetic example of Oo's kinship code lies in how creation itself never truly ends. When something dies, it doesn't vanish. It leaves traces, memories, echoes that inspire new forms of life. When Finn loses someone, he carries a piece of them in his actions. When a kingdom falls, its essence seeps into the soil, becoming the foundation for something else. It's as if Oo's heart beats through every relationship, every act of creation, reminding the world that connection is what keeps it alive. But kinship in Oo isn't always gentle. It can also bind people to pain. There's a quiet kind of tragedy that runs through its families. Broken promises, lost parents, estranged friends. And yet, even those wounds serve the balance. They teach resilience, empathy, and understanding. They remind every creature that love, even when fractured, is worth holding on to. The land of Oo doesn't thrive because its people are perfect. It thrives because they remember each other. Even when worlds change and time folds, memory keeps them together. And in that remembrance, creation continues, endlessly shaping the landscape of the heart. The longer you spend wandering through Oo, the more you begin to see that its greatest law is love disguised as survival. Every being, no matter how strange or powerful, is shaped by the connections it forms, the invisible promises that tie them to one another. It's not the crowns or thrones that define this land, but the small, sincere gestures shared in quiet moments. Take Princess Bubblegum again. Her creation of the Candy Kingdom wasn't merely an act of power or ambition. It was loneliness turned into life. Each citizen she molded from sugar and science carried a fragment of her hope, her anxiety, her need for companionship. Over time, her people became her family. But like any family born from fear of solitude, it came with complications. Her need to protect them sometimes hardened into control, her love bending into... That's another truth about kinship. When love tries too hard to preserve what it cherishes, it risks losing the warmth that... This same lesson echoes in the story of Magic Man. Once a joyful and brilliant Martian, his descent into chaos began not from hatred, but from loss, the death of his beloved Margles. Unable to accept that she was gone, he used his power to lash out at the world, transforming his pain into cruelty. It was his way of keeping connection alive, even if twisted. His story is a painful reflection of what happens when the code of kinship fractures, when creation, driven by grief, turns to destruction. Yet even through his madness, there remains a faint glimmer of that lost tenderness. In Oo, even broken hearts hum with the energy of creation. We can also see this code in the relationship between Marceline and Simon. Long before she was the vampire queen, she was a scared child wandering a ruined world, clutching a teddy bear and searching for safety. Simon became that safety, a fragile, human shield between her and the chaos of post-war Earth. Their bond transcended the rules of family, becoming something pure, devotion born in the ashes. And even when Simon lost himself to the Ice King's crown, some quiet part of him still remembered her. That tiny ember of love endured centuries of madness. It's proof that kinship in Oo isn't just emotional, it's almost spiritual, something woven into the essence of existence. Even creatures who seem incapable of connection follow this rule in their own way. The lich, for instance, exists as the embodiment of death and entropy, yet his very persistence is a reflection of life's influence. He needs life to oppose him, to give him shape. Without creation, he would have no meaning. His endless attempts to destroy are an unconscious acknowledgement of how creation defines the world. Even destruction, in Oo's strange rhythm, plays a role in keeping the balance alive. Then there's the story of Lemongrab being born from Princess Bubblegum's experimentation, yet constantly trapped in the agony of imperfection. His cries of unacceptable are more than tantrums. They're the screams of a creation that longs for understanding. He was never meant to be loved, yet deep inside, that's all he desires. His existence is a haunting echo of one of Oo's most complex truths, that everything born of creation, no matter how flawed, seeks connection, to be seen, to be known. The beauty of Oo's kinship code lies in how it stretches beyond the physical. It's not just about bonds between beings, it's about the connections that ripple through time and nature. When Finn dreams, he sometimes glimpses his past lives, seeing how old souls carry forward into new bodies. These reincarnations are not punishments or rewards. They are continuations of relationship and ongoing conversation between creation and consciousness. Every lifetime becomes another thread in the web of Ao's memory. Even the land itself participates in this cycle. When the Gumball Kingdom rose again after centuries of silence, it wasn't through conquest or discovery, it was through remembrance. The remnants of an old lineage reawakened, drawn back to the surface by the pull of unfinished stories. Ooh never forgets its creations. It lets them sleep until they are ready to return. In a strange way, that's the most comforting part of this world's unwritten law. Nothing is ever truly lost. Love might fade, friendships might break, kingdoms might crumble, but their echoes continue to shape what comes next. Every act of kindness plants something unseen in the soil. Every moment of connection adds a new verse to the song of existence. And even when time erases faces and names, the feeling, that soft pulse of belonging, remains. When Finn and Jake help someone in need, when Marceline forgives a past hurt, when Bubblegum softens her grip and chooses compassion over control, those are the moments that keep Oo's heart beating. The codes of kinship and creation aren't ancient laws carved in stone. They're gentle choices made again and again by beings who know that love, in all its fragile forms, is what gives the universe its color. These unseen laws of kinship stretch far beyond friendship and blood. They reach into the very nature of how Ooh continues to exist. Creation in this world is rarely random. It's always emotional, always rooted in a feeling. Someone's longing, fear, curiosity, or love becomes the spark that gives rise to something new. That's what makes Oo's magic feel alive. It doesn't come from formula or ritual, but from heart. When Peppermint Butler studies dark magic, it isn't hunger for control that drives him, it's devotion. A strange, quiet loyalty to the balance of things. His fascination with forbidden power comes from his need to protect Princess Bubblegum and the kingdom he loves. His morality may blur, but his intent always circles back to kinship. In Ooh, creation, fueled by care, even when misguided, carries a gentleness at its core. That's what separates its world from cold logic or ruthless ambition. We can even see this in the bond between Jake and his children. Despite his easygoing nature, Jake understands the weight of being a creator. Each of his pups inherits something unique from him, a fragment of magic, a reflection of his choices, an echo of his essence. But he never clings to them or tries to shape their futures. Instead, he lets them wander, trusting that love will guide them wherever they go. His quiet acceptance becomes its own law. That true creation means letting go, not possession. That same principle hums beneath the surface of Oo's ecology. Forests seem to remember the footsteps of those who walked through them. Rivers carry whispers of old songs. Even the clouds drift in familiar patterns, as though they too have memories. When you think about it, Oo's environment feels sentient because each piece of it was created from emotion, from the residue of life. Every tree, every sparkle of water is a child of someone's dream or sorrow. The land itself is an act of remembrance. One of the most subtle examples of this is the relationship between Finn and the grass that once became part of him, the grass sword that evolved into Fern. What began as a weapon became a companion, then a rival, then something sacred. Their bond shows how creation in Ooh is never straightforward. Things evolve because of emotion, not despite it. Finn's compassion toward Fern transforms the story from conflict into reconciliation, death into renewal. Fern's final act, becoming the seed that grows into a tree, completes that cycle beautifully. Creation gives way to kinship, and kinship, in turn, becomes new creation. In that way, Oo's unwritten laws are more cyclical than linear. Nothing begins or ends abruptly. Every relationship, no matter how temporary, leaves a soft imprint that guides what comes next. The world itself listens, learns, and reshapes. It's almost as though the universe is participating in these relationships too, responding with subtle adjustments each time someone chooses love over fear or forgiveness over anger. This cosmic empathy is what gives O its dreamlike quality. The world feels alive, not because it's filled with monsters and magic, but because it reacts to emotion. When a kingdom mourns, the sky darkens. When laughter fills the air, flowers bloom brighter. When someone forgives, storms calm. These are not coincidences. They are the quiet answers of a sentient land, upholding the same codes that govern its people. Even in the most desolate corners of Oo, where silence reigns and shadows linger, the pulse of connection still hums beneath the soil. The nightosphere, for instance, might seem a place of endless cruelty and chaos, but even there, kinship finds a way to flicker through the darkness. Hunsan Abadir, the lord of that infernal realm, has power beyond measure, and yet it's his bond with Marceline that softens the edges of his existence. Her very presence reminds him that creation cannot exist without compassion. Even demons, it seems, are touched by the longing to be loved. It's this paradox that defines the heart of Oo, the idea that creation is most powerful when it's shared. Even the gods and ancient beings crave connection. Prismo, suspended in the cosmic plane, grants wishes for company as much as for purpose. The cosmic owl drifts through dreams, not to judge, but to witness the intimate worlds people build within their hearts. These beings, who could easily remain detached, instead choose to participate in the emotional lives of mortals. It's as if the universe itself can't resist the pull of kinship. And perhaps that's the secret to Oo's endurance. The world doesn't survive because of power, technology, or order. It survives because its people care, even when it hurts. Every time someone reaches out instead of turning away, the world steadies. Every small kindness becomes a thread in the great tapestry of life, weaving together the living and the lost, the ancient and the newly born. Even time itself seems to respect this code. The past never truly vanishes. It folds gently into the present, carried forward through memory and emotion. When Marceline strums her bass and sings of her childhood, the echoes of a long-gone world resurface. When Bubblegum glances at an old experiment and feels regret, the universe listens. When Finn gazes at the stars and wonders about his origins, something vast and unseen answers him, not with words, but with warmth. That warmth, that gentle pulse of connection, is Oo's quiet truth. It tells us that creation, no matter how powerful or small, is meant to be shared. It's meant to comfort, to heal, to remind us that even in a world of strange creatures and impossible magic, the most enduring force is love, simple, soft, and endlessly reborn. When we think of Oo's creations, from candy people to elemental deities, it's easy to see them as separate, scattered pieces of a strange mosaic. But if you look closer, you begin to sense the thread that ties them all together. It's a quiet reverence for relationships, for the act of making something not out of dominance, but devotion. Every living thing in Oo seems to emerge from a promise, whether spoken or silent, a promise to remember, to connect, to protect. That's what makes Princess Bubblegum such a fascinating figure. She embodies this duality, a scientist who shapes life from sugar and willpower, yet still governed by emotion. Her creations, like the citizens of the Candy Kingdom, are not just inventions. They are her family. Every one of them is born from her need for companionship, from her longing to rebuild after loss. And even when her leadership turns cold or controlling, there's always that flicker of love underneath. She doesn't just build, she nurtures. It's an act of creation intertwined with kinship, messy, flawed, and profoundly human. This pattern repeats across reflected in the smallest creatures and grandest beings alike. The flame kingdom burns with passion and wrath, yet within its heat lies tenderness. Flame. Princess herself struggles to control the fire of her emotions, but that struggle is sacred, a symbol of how creation and kinship can sometimes collide. Her flames destroy and heal in equal measure. When she learns to forgive and love, her fire becomes something gentler, something that warms rather than scorches. Through her, we see how U's laws never demand perfection, only sincerity. Even Simon Petrikov's transformation into the Ice King fits this cosmic code. His descent into madness was tragic, yes, but it also gave birth to countless bonds. His lonely heart called out, creating a strange kind of kinship with those who pitied, loved, or even feared him. His madness became a bridge, a cold, fragile one that connected him to others. And in the end, when Simon regains himself, the world responds with forgiveness. Because remembers the love that shaped the tragedy, not just the pain it followed. What's most beautiful is how these codes aren't enforced, they're simply felt. No one in ever needs to explain them. They exist in gestures, in choices, in the quiet gravity between characters. Finn's instinct to help, Marceline's songs of longing, Bubblegum's restless inventing, even the Lich's endless hunger, all of them move according to unseen principles. The universe of doesn't distinguish between good and evil in the way we do. It sees the intention beneath the act, the emotion that gives it weight. That's the essence of its kinship. Even destruction becomes part of creation's rhythm when it's born from meaning. Sometimes that meaning is deeply personal. Think of BMO, that tiny robot with a childlike heart. They aren't just a machine built to serve. They dream, play, and love with a purity untouched by fear. BMO's Existence is a poem about innocence, about creation without agenda. They live the law of kinship effortlessly, reminding everyone around them that to be alive is to connect, to imagine, to care. In BMO's eyes, the entire world is a family, from the stars to the dust. Even death obeys this rule. In endings never truly separate, they transform. When beings die, their energy flows back into the fabric of creation. Trees grow from ashes, new beings rise from remnants, and memories linger in songs and stories. It's a constant recycling of affection. Death in this world isn't a severance, it's a return to the collective heartbeat of existence. That's why ghosts and echoes wander so peacefully through the land. They're still part of the family, still bound by the old laws. If you listen closely, you can almost hear those laws whispering through the wind. They aren't written in books or carved into stone. They hum in the way a friend's laughter brightens a day, or how a shared meal becomes a ritual of care. They are the reasons kingdoms rise again after ruin, and why, even after great destruction, hope always takes root. The people of don't consciously follow these rules. They live them instinctively, like breathing. And that's perhaps the deepest truth of all, that kinship and creation aren't separate acts, but one and the same. To create something, a song, a kingdom, a friend, is to acknowledge your connection to the universe. To love is to shape reality itself. In every bond leaves an imprint on the world, and the world, in turn, gives something back. It's a cycle so subtle that it feels almost divine, yet it's made entirely of ordinary things: compassion, curiosity, forgiveness, and warmth. When the night settles over and the glow of kingdoms fades into the distance, those invisible threads still shimmer in the dark. You can feel them in the hush between the trees, in the gentle hum of the land itself. They bind together everything that lives and everything that was a quiet, sacred network of care. This is the law that no one speaks of, yet everyone obeys. The code that has kept Ooh alive through eons of chaos and change. The law of kinship and creation. The understanding that every life, no matter how fleeting, is part of a greater story being written by countless hands, hearts, and dreams all at once. In Ooh, nothing stays still for long. Kingdoms rise like waves, shimmering and proud, only to dissolve into the sea of time. Rulers emerge from chaos with bright intentions, yet even their empires eventually bend, break, and reshape themselves into something new. It's a rhythm so natural that no one questions it, the steady heartbeat of creation and collapse. Ooh doesn't resist change. It invites it, embraces it, folds it into its story. Rule and rebellion aren't opposites here. They are partners in an endless dance. When we look across the history of this strange and beautiful land, we see that every ruler carries the echo of rebellion within them. Princess Bubblegum, for instance, embodies both order and defiance. She creates a world of precision, structure, and safety, yet she herself was once a product of rebellion. Born from a post-apocalyptic landscape, she defied entropy by building life from sugar, by crafting joy where only ruin remained. Her rule is one of intellect and control, but beneath that calm lies the same fire that drove her to rise against the void. Even her perfectionism is a form of resistance, a refusal to let decay win. And yet, her kingdom, like all of Ooh, cannot escape the cycle. The Candy Kingdom's peace depends on fragile obedience. Too much control breeds unrest. Too little, and chaos seeps in. At times, her creations, the Candy citizens she built with love, question her choices. They long for freedom, individuality, unpredictability. And so the seeds of rebellion grow quietly, beneath the layers of sweetness. Ooh's unspoken law ensures that where there is rule, there must one day be revolt, not from hatred, but from the natural pull toward change. We can see the same principle in the Flame Kingdom, where passion itself fuels power. Flame King's tyranny was born of fear, the need to control the uncontrollable. He believed his daughter's fire must be contained, that her emotions would consume the world. But that very suppression became the spark of his downfall. Flame Princess's rebellion was not an act of cruelty. It was an act of balance. In liberating herself, she restored the equilibrium that her father's dominance had broken. Her flames, once chained, became the very force that renewed her people's spirit. That's the curious beauty of Ooh rebellion isn't destruction for the sake of power. It's a necessary recalibration, a cleansing breath that lets the world exhale. Each rebellion gives birth to a new kind of rule, softer or stranger, sometimes kinder, sometimes colder. The process is endless, yet it never feels futile. Even when civilizations crumble, their remnants are not lost, they're absorbed into the soil of Ooh's collective memory. From those fragments, new stories take root. Marceline's story is another thread in this endless cycle. She has seen empires rise and fall, watched the world burn and bloom again. Her existence alone is a rebellion against time. Born of both human and demon, she defies simple categorization. She resists the hierarchies that others cling to, refusing to rule, refusing to obey. Her songs carry the ache of centuries, but also the quiet satisfaction of freedom. In her wandering, she honors the natural order of Ooh better than any throne could. She lives the unwritten law that balance can only be found in movement, not in permanence. Even the Lich, in his twisted way, is a part of this pattern. His obsession with ending life is the shadow side of creation's cycle, the rebellion against existence itself. Yet every time he rises, he's defeated not by sheer strength, but by compassion, by connection, by the very forces that make resilient. His destruction fuels renewal. His failure ensures continuity. In that way, even the purest embodiment of rebellion against life becomes another instrument of life's rhythm. The Ice Kingdom, too, tells a story of rule turned inward, a solitary kingdom ruled by loneliness. The Ice King's reign is not marked by power or fear, but by longing. He doesn't impose his will on others through cruelty. He simply tries to fill the void of isolation. His madness becomes its own quiet rebellion, a refusal to let go of love, even when memory fades. Though tragic, his story reminds us that not all rebellion is loud. Some of it happens in silence, in the stubborn act of holding on to hope when everything else has been lost. Throughout Uwu's long history, these cycles echo like cads. The land of Uo is not sustained by law or might, but by renewal. Each generation redefines what it means to rule and what it means to rebel. Sometimes the balance swings too far in one direction. Kingdoms harden, magic fades, chaos spreads, but always the pendulum finds its way back. The land itself seems to remember what its people forget, that stability without change is stagnation, and change without care is ruin. Uwu breathes between those two extremes, finding beauty in their tension. As we drift deeper into this world's gentle mysteries, it becomes clear that these cycles aren't mistakes or punishments. They're lessons. Lessons written into the stars, the soil, and the hearts of its people. To rule is to accept the inevitability of rebellion. To rebel is to prepare the way for new creation. And through it all, the land of Uwu watches, patient and kind, letting its people learn, fall, and rise again. Every kingdom in Uwu, no matter how peaceful or chaotic, carries the memory of this rhythm. The ruins scattered across the land are not just relics of destruction. They are reminders that every act of leadership, every moment of defiance, leaves an imprint on the landscape. You can feel it in the cracked towers swallowed by vines, in the melted castles buried beneath new forests. The land never erases what came before. It simply layers new stories over the old. Each collapse becomes part of the foundation for what grows next. If you were to wander through the fields where the Mushroom War once scorched the earth, you might still sense the echoes of that long-ago rebellion. The war itself was the greatest uprising Uwu had ever known, not between kings and queens, but between humanity and the world they once tried to master. It was the rebellion of progress against nature, of science against consequence. And yet, from that final destruction, Uwu was born. Magic returned, life reassembled itself into strange new forms, and the survivors, both human and otherwise, began again. The end of one world became the seed of another. That same principle plays out on smaller scales, too. Think of the tree fort Finn and Jake's cozy home, perched high above the forest floor. It stands as a symbol of gentle rebellion. It's not a castle, not a kingdom, not a place of rule or conquest. It's a refuge from all of that, a space built on freedom and friendship, sustained by laughter and love. In their own way, Finn and Jake live outside the cycle of thrones and wars. They remind Uwu that sometimes rebellion is as simple as choosing joy over power. Their adventures never aim to dominate. They seek understanding, harmony, and connection. That quiet defiance might be the purest kind of rebellion there is. Even Finn himself embodies the cycle of rule and resistance. As a human in a post-human world, his very existence challenges the established order. Yet he never fights for control, only for balance. Over time, we see him grow from a reckless hero into a patient guardian, someone who learns that true strength lies not in defeating others, but in forgiving them. His journey mirrors Oo's own evolution, from chaos into calm, from survival into wisdom. His heart becomes the compass that keeps the cycle turning gently instead of violently. Princess Bubblegum's arc, too, reveals the cost of fighting against the natural rhythm. For years, she tried to maintain perfect order, convinced that logic could save her kingdom from decay. But Ooh has never obeyed the laws of science alone. It breathes through emotion, through instinct, through the unpredictable pulse of life. When she begins to trust that truth, when she lets others lead, when she loosens her grip, her world becomes lighter. Her leadership no longer resists rebellion, it flows with it. She learns, slowly and tenderly, that the cycle doesn't have to be destructive if met with compassion. We see echoes of this lesson in smaller corners of Ooh as well. The kingdom of lumpy space, for example, exists in perpetual contradiction. It's a place of bizarre freedom, where chaos is the rule and individuality reigns. Yet even there, the same laws apply. The lumpy space princess herself rebels against structure, against her parents, against convention, but her rebellion is also a longing for belonging. Every time she runs away, she ends up circling back, craving the very connection she resists. Her journey shows that rebellion isn't just against authority. Sometimes it's against loneliness, against the fear of being forgotten. And then there's the elemental balance fire, ice, candy, and slime, each ruling in their own era, each rising and falling in turn. These elements embody the grandest form of Oo's cyclical nature. When one grows too strong, the world tips into imbalance. When they harmonize, creation flourishes. The elemental wars and alliances reflect an eternal truth. No force in Ooh can exist without its opposite. Control gives meaning to freedom. Passion tempers cold logic. Decay clears the way for growth. In every age, rule and rebellion intertwine, neither capable of existing without the other. Oo's people understand this, even if only in their hearts. They don't cling to rulers forever. They don't despair when kingdoms fall, because deep down, they trust that something new will always rise. The world itself has taught them this through storms that turn into gardens, through ruins that become havens, through loss that transforms into memory. Rebellion isn't a curse here. It's the way Ooh keeps itself alive. And maybe that's what makes the land of Ooh so strangely comforting, even in its chaos. It never fears change. It never fights to hold still. Every fall, every uprising, every quiet act of defiance is treated not as an ending, but as another heartbeat in the endless song of existence. In this world, even the collapse of a kingdom feels less like tragedy and more like a sigh, a gentle exhale before the next dawn begins to rise. Even in the smallest moments, Ooh reminds us that cycles of rule and rebellion are natural and necessary. Look at the adventures Finn and Jake undertake, seemingly chaotic, whimsical journeys that nonetheless restore balance in subtle ways. A minor skirmish with a rogue creature, a disagreement between kingdoms, a playful challenge to authority. Each incident echoes the broader rhythm of the land. No one act is permanent, yet each contributes to the continuous renewal of Ooh. Even play becomes a form of rebellion, a gentle testing of limits that ensures no one kingdom or ruler becomes too rigid. The Ice King's story is another lens into this law. His repeated attempts to seize princesses and impose his whims may seem comical, but they illustrate a deeper truth. Rebellion often arises not out of malice, but out of need, a craving for attention, understanding, or purpose. In a way, his antics remind the citizens of that authority is not an absolute right, and that even the most eccentric ruler must remain accountable to the natural currents of the world. The Ice King's failures, as tragic as they are, sustain the balance by ensuring no one, however powerful, remains unchecked for too long. Similarly, Finn and Flame Princess showcase a microcosm of these cycles in personal relationships. Their moments of conflict and reconciliation are miniature reflections of the broader dance between authority and rebellion. When one asserts control and the other resists, the tension often births growth. Flame Princess learns to master her power without letting it dominate her relationships, while Finn learns the patience required to respect autonomy. In this, teaches that rebellion isn't always destructive. It can be instructive, shaping the way its inhabitants evolve emotionally, morally, and magically. Even the Candy Kingdom, often seen as the epitome of order, carries reminders that rebellion is woven into the fabric of existence. The citizens, though designed to serve and sustain, occasionally challenge Bubblegum's authority. These rebellions are rarely violent. They are questions, experiments, tests of boundaries. By allowing these moments to unfold, the kingdom maintains a living, breathing equilibrium. Rule without rebellion stagnates, but rebellion without structure collapses. Thrives in the tension between these two poles, teaching us that true harmony is dynamic, never static. The elemental forces of fire, ice, candy, and slime also reflect this balance. Each rises and wanes in turn, their influence waxing and waning like the tide. When one element dominates too long, the land bends under imbalance. Fire unchecked can scorch, ice uncontrolled can freeze life, candy mismanaged can suffocate creativity, and slime unrestrained can overwhelm the fragile order of civilization. Rebellion here is not just the act of conscious beings, it's written into the very fabric of the world. Nature itself participates in the cycle, correcting excesses, returning the land to a state where life can flourish once more. Even the most abstract beings, such as Prismo and the cosmic owl, respect this rhythm. Their interventions are rarely about control. Instead, they guide the cycles subtly, nudging events without forcing them. Wishes, dreams, and premonitions become instruments of balance, reminding mortals that rebellion and authority are intertwined, inseparable from the flow of the universe. Oo's guardians, in essence, act less as enforcers and more as custodians, maintaining the dance rather than dictating its steps. History itself in is cyclical. Entire generations rise and fall, often unaware of the lessons left behind. Humans, though largely absent after the Mushroom War, leave remnants that shape future civilizations. Magic rises to fill the void, only to be tempered by mortality and emotional truth. Each cycle repeats not identically, but with subtle variations, as if the world experiments, learns, and adjusts. What was once chaos becomes order, only to become chaos again. And through it all, life continues, resilient and adaptive. The rise of new kingdoms, the collapse of old empires, and the endless adventures of Oo's inhabitants are all threads in this intricate tapestry. Even when a rebellion seems minor, even when a rule appears insignificant, it carries the potential to ripple across time and space. A single act of defiance, a moment of courage, or even a quiet refusal can reshape a kingdom influence a ruler, or inspire generations. U operates on this principle. Nothing is too small to matter, and every choice, however fleeting, has its place in the cycle. Perhaps the most comforting aspect of this law is its impartiality. U does not favor the strong over the weak, the old over the young, or the magical over the mortal. Every act of rebellion, every moment of governance, is weighed not by power but by consequence and intention. The world doesn't punish, it teaches. Kingdoms fail not because they are unworthy, but because the land demands renewal, growth, and evolution. It is an education conducted on a cosmic scale, where every being, from the tiniest candy citizen to the most ancient elemental, participates willingly or unwittingly. And through these cycles, U never ceases to astonish. Destruction and creation intermingle seamlessly. Authority and rebellion entwine like vines around a tree, and the land itself seems to hum with quiet anticipation for what will come next. Even in moments of chaos, there is a strange serenity, a sense that nothing is permanent, yet everything matters. The lessons of rule and revolt are ongoing, subtle, and profoundly patient, allowing the world to grow, transform, and endure. As we delve deeper into U's cycles of rule and rebellion, it becomes clear that the land itself is as much a participant in this rhythm as its inhabitants. The kingdoms and their rulers are not isolated actors. They are conduits through which the world expresses balance, tension, and renewal. The rise of a monarchy, the spark of insurrection, the quiet stirrings of dissent, each is part of a living, breathing ecosystem that thrives on motion rather than stagnation. Authority is a river, rebellion its current, and U's magic is the soil that allows both to flow in harmony. Even minor disruptions carry weight in this pattern. A simple act of defiance, like BMO resisting an imposed role or Lumpy Space Princess asserting her independence, might seem trivial on the surface. Yet these small rebellions ripple outward, reminding those in power that control is never absolute. The world of U respects balance above all, and any disturbance, whether playful or profound, is absorbed, reshaped, and woven into the tapestry of history. Rebellion is less a threat than a conversation with the universe, a way for life to adjust to its own imperfections. Consider Finn's evolution as a hero across the land. His initial adventures were driven by impulse and the desire to fight what was wrong. But as he grows, he begins to understand that rebellion is not only an act of defiance, but also a gesture of understanding. It's a way to correct imbalance, to guide authority toward empathy, to remind even the wisest rulers that their dominion is not absolute. Finn becomes a bridge between those who govern and those who resist, embodying the principle that rule and rebellion are complementary forces, each giving meaning to the other. The elemental kingdoms illustrate this principle on a grand scale. Fire, ice, candy, and slime each rise to prominence, only to face challenges from forces that test their limits. These are not random acts of chaos, but essential movements that maintain equilibrium. Fire unchecked can consume. Ice unrestrained can freeze. Candy without challenge can stagnate. And slime without opposition can overwhelm. Rebellion, in this sense, is not a flaw but a mechanism of preservation. Each cycle of challenge and adjustment ensures that life persists in a state of dynamic balance, never rigid, never static. Even the so-called villains of U participate in this natural law. The Lich, for instance, embodies the ultimate rebellion against life itself. His intent is annihilation, yet he is repeatedly thwarted by forces rooted in care, love, and courage. Every confrontation between him and the heroes reinforces the idea that rebellion is necessary, even when destructive, to maintain the broader equilibrium. Ooh does not simply allow destruction to dominate. It tempers it, channels it, and transforms it into lessons that preserve the flow of life. The cycles extend to relationships as well. Marceline and Bubblegum exemplify personal revolutions that mirror the larger patterns of governance. Their conflicts and reconciliations are not merely interpersonal dramas, but manifestations of O's deeper principle, that emotional and social structures, like kingdoms, must ebb and flow to remain vibrant. Rebellion against control, whether from a ruler or from circumstance, is a catalyst for growth, for creativity, and for deeper connection. It keeps relationships alive, adaptive, and authentic. Even history itself is cyclical in U. Empires rise, magic flourishes, wars rage, and then the land heals. What was lost in one generation seeds the next. The Mushroom War, a cataclysm of human ambition, gave birth to the chaotic yet wondrous landscapes of the present. Ruins and relics remind the living that authority is temporary and rebellion inevitable. Each cycle educates, reshapes, and strengthens the land and its people, embedding resilience into the very fabric of U. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of these cycles is how they foster hope. In a world where kingdoms fall, rulers falter, and magic sometimes spirals out of control, life continues. Rebellion ensures that no regime or power becomes absolute. No kingdom remains unchallenged. Rule guarantees that society holds together long enough to weather storms. Together, they create a rhythm that is simultaneously reassuring and invigorating. The world will change, and it will endure. Through this continuous ebb and flow, U teaches a lesson both simple and eternal. Power is never permanent. Resistance is never futile. Every act of governance, every spark of defiance, contributes to the health and vitality of the land. The cycles of rule and rebellion are not signs of disorder, but rather the quiet heartbeat of a universe that thrives on balance, adaptability, and compassion. And as the night deepens and the land of U rests beneath the soft glow of stars and moonlight, we realize that these cycles are not something to fear. They are gentle reminders that life in all its forms is alive because it changes. Authority gives shape. Rebellion gives motion. Creation and renewal emerge from this delicate tension. U exists not in spite of its cycles, but because of them, a land perpetually learning, endlessly forgiving, and forever growing. Beyond the walls of kingdoms, beyond the structured streets of the Candy Kingdom, and far from the soaring spires of the ice and flame realms, there exists a quieter, subtler form of order. These are the wilds of U forests that hum with ancient magic, rivers that whisper secrets to the wind, caves that house both danger and sanctuary. And within this untamed expanse lie the silent pacts that guide creatures, elemental forces, and even wandering adventurers alike. These pacts are not written in stone, nor taught in schools, nor declared in any court. They exist as quiet agreements, instinctual understandings, and whispered codes that keep the wilderness alive and in balance. The wilds of U are home to countless beings, each with its own desires, fears, and rhythms. Some are magical, some mundane, and some defy any categorization we might attempt. Yet despite the apparent chaos, there is an unspoken order. Predators hunt, but only enough to sustain themselves. Plants grow in abundance, but never to choke the rivers or suffocate the soil. Magic courses through the wilds, but rarely with malice. The pacts of the wilds are essentially a covenant with life itself, to take only what is needed, to honor the cycles of birth and decay, and to respect the invisible lines that connect every living being. These pacts are ancient, older than the kingdoms, older than the remnants of humanity scattered across the land. When Finn and Jake wander into dense forests or climb the craggy peaks of distant mountains, they may encounter creatures that seem feral or unwelcoming. Yet even in these first encounters, there is an implicit understanding, a mutual recognition that neither should overstep. When a wild creature attacks, it is often testing boundaries rather than seeking destruction. When Finn and Jake tread carefully, respecting the territory and the life that dwells within, the wilds respond with guidance, protection, or at least tolerance. This delicate balance is the essence of the silent pacts. One of the most profound examples of these pacts can be seen in the way elemental creatures interact with their environment. The flame elemental does not scorch the forest indiscriminately. It preserves certain glades, channels its fire along predetermined paths, and occasionally ignites growth rather than destruction. The ice elemental sculpts glaciers and snowfields with care, leaving rivers to flow freely and valleys to bloom once the frost recedes. Even the slime elemental moves with intent, shaping the earth without suffocating the life around it. Each elemental abides by the rules of the wilds, acting as both agent and observer, maintaining equilibrium in ways both subtle and profound. Animals and magical beasts also adhere to these unspoken laws. The woodland creatures, the sentient mushrooms, the spectral owls, and even the mischievous goblins are participants in a vast ecosystem of agreements that predate human memory. They may quarrel, chase, flee, or hide, but they rarely obliterate one another without cause. There is a rhythm to their existence, a silent choreography that ensures the forest, the mountains, and the rivers continue to thrive. Predators and prey, hunter and hunted, trickster and sage all play their roles in this intricate dance. The silent pacts extend beyond mere survival. They shape alliances, truces, and territorial understandings. A river troll may allow a wandering hero passage if the hero shows respect to the waters. A grove of ancient trees may shelter a lost creature if the intruder treads softly and acknowledges the life that surrounds them. Magic in the wilds is sensitive to intent. Even creatures capable of great destruction, like the Lich's minions or rogue elemental spirits, are subtly constrained by these unspoken agreements. The wilderness itself enforces the pacts, rewarding respect and punishing arrogance. Even Finn and Jake, in all their bravery and curiosity, are bound by these silent rules. Their journey through the uncharted forests or the depths of haunted caves is guided by instinct and understanding. They learn, often without words, that some territories must be approached with humility, some creatures with patience, and some mysteries with restraint. Their respect for the pacts allows them not only to survive, but to witness wonders that might otherwise remain hidden. These moments reveal the deep wisdom embedded in Ooze wilds. Life thrives when cooperation is implicit, when harmony is preferred over conquest, and when the bonds between all living things are acknowledged, however quietly. The wilds also carry the memory of past agreements long after the original participants have vanished. Trees, rivers, and stones retain the echoes of pacts made centuries ago. A path through a grove may remain safe for travelers because a creature long gone once established that boundary. A lake may nurture certain life forms because of a covenant forged between elemental forces and water spirits long forgotten. In Oo, history is alive not just in stories, but in the land itself. These silent pacts act as the invisible ledger, maintaining the delicate balance of the wilds without a single word ever spoken. The beauty of these silent pacts lies in their subtlety. They are not enforced by threats or laws, but by a shared understanding that the health of the land depends on cooperation. Even creatures that seem chaotic or unpredictable are bound by these agreements. A mischievous forest spirit may play tricks on travelers, but it will not destroy what it cannot replace. A wandering elemental may scorch a clearing, but only in a way that allows the forest to regenerate. There is a quiet wisdom in the wilds, a recognition that life, in all its forms, is interconnected, and that survival depends on honoring those invisible lines. This quiet understanding extends to the relationships between species, as well as to individuals within those species. Predators and prey, hunters and gatherers, spirits and mortals all navigate the landscape with an instinctual respect for boundaries. Wolves, foxes, and magical beasts may compete, yet they do so in ways that maintain equilibrium. Each life form knows when to advance and when to retreat, when to assert dominance and when to yield. These behaviors are not taught. They are felt, embedded into the rhythm of existence itself. Ooze wilds operate on intuition, on empathy, on the silent recognition that every act affects the whole. Even humans and other sentient beings who wander into these untamed spaces are subject to these subtle rules. Finn and Jake, for instance, have learned to approach unknown creatures with patience and humility. They sense that the wilderness is not theirs to command, but theirs to navigate respectfully. A careless action, cutting down trees without thought, disturbing nests, or casting uncontrolled magic, can provoke consequences that seem almost alive. Yet when approached with reverence and care, the wilds respond with guidance, protection, or even unexpected allies. These interactions reveal the underlying truth of Ooh, that life thrives not through domination, but through quiet agreements and mutual respect. Magic, too, is woven into these pacts. The wilds are saturated with enchantment, yet it is not chaotic for chaos' sake. Magical forces are carefully balanced, shaped by ancient agreements that predate kingdoms and civilizations. Fire burns, ice freezes, plants grow, and rivers flow, but always within the limits set by the unspoken laws of the land. Even powerful entities like Prismo or the cosmic owl respect these boundaries when interacting with the wilds. Their interference is measured, never absolute, allowing the natural rhythms to persist. In this way, the wilderness becomes a living classroom for understanding balance, restraint, and the interdependence of all beings. The pacts are not static. They shift with time, responding to the ebb and flow of life. New creatures may enter a forest, rivers may change course, elemental energies may rise or fall, and yet the fundamental agreements remain. They adapt, flex, and recalibrate without losing their essence. The wisdom of the wilds is dynamic, teaching that survival is not about rigid rules, but about harmony, responsiveness, and a willingness to coexist. Even ancient ruins or forgotten realms in the wilderness bear traces of these agreements, showing that respect for life can endure long after civilizations have vanished. Ooh's silent pacts also foster alliances that transcend species, kingdoms, and elemental boundaries. A grove of trees might shelter an injured animal, not out of obligation, but because of the unspoken understanding that protection ensures continuation. A river spirit might guide a lost traveler to safety, trusting that kindness will ripple back through the web of life. Even adversaries may honor these pacts when mutual survival or preservation of the land is at stake. In Ooh, respect and empathy operate at a fundamental, almost instinctual level, connecting all forms of existence in a delicate, unbroken chain. The deep forests, sprawling plains, and hidden caves all hum with this invisible agreement. You can sense it in the hush of the trees, the murmur of the rivers, the quiet watchfulness of the creatures that dwell there. There is a calm, almost sacred energy that pervades these spaces, a reminder that life in the wild is neither random nor chaotic, but guided by an unspoken understanding that every act has consequence and every creature its role. These silent pacts ensure that the wilds remain not only alive but thriving, a testament to the quiet, enduring intelligence that shapes beyond the reach of kings or elemental rulers. The silent pacts of the wilds do more than preserve life. They shape the very culture and behavior of inhabitants. Even sentient beings, when venturing into untamed regions, are guided by the subtle currents of these agreements. Finn and Jake, for example, rarely move through the forest without sensing a form of unspoken oversight. Their adventures, while often chaotic in appearance, are tempered by the instinctive knowledge that the land watches, listens, and responds. It is as if every tree, stream, and creature carries a memory of prior travelers, a gentle wisdom that corrects reckless behavior and encourages harmony. These pacts extend the balance of magic itself. The magical energies that course through whose wilds are not arbitrary. They follow unrecorded agreements as ancient as the elements. Fire burns within limits that allow forests to regrow. Rivers teem with enchanted life, and air currents carry whispers of both warning and guidance. Even the most volatile spirits learn to temper their power, or else the land itself will shift in response. Oo's wilds are alive with a quiet intelligence, enforcing equilibrium without coercion, sustaining life through subtle persuasion rather than blunt force. Creatures who exist solely within the wilds also demonstrate this intrinsic order. Wolves, for instance, may hunt and protect their territory, but they avoid unnecessary conflict with other packs or with travelers who show respect. The mischievous goblins that dwell in hidden groves do not destroy indiscriminately. They engage in playful challenges, testing the cleverness of intruders without threatening the ecosystem's balance. Even spectral entities like the wandering ghosts of long-forgotten forests abide by rules unspoken yet universally understood. They protect the memories and sanctity of their domain, guiding lost travelers without imposing arbitrary harm. It is in these interactions that Finn and Jake learn some of Oo's most profound lessons. The wilderness teaches them patience, respect, and observation. They discover that aggression is rarely necessary when curiosity and understanding prevail. By honoring the silent pacts, they gain allies in unexpected forms, a river spirit guiding them to safety, a forest sprite showing hidden paths, or a magical creature assisting in ways that are subtle yet critical. Through these experiences, they internalize the understanding that coexistence is the most potent magic of all. The pacts also influence the cycles of conflict and peace within the wilds. Even when a creature or elemental force acts aggressively, there is an underlying recognition that the attack cannot destabilize the land entirely. Firestorms rage, avalanches tumble, and rivers flood. But these events rarely destroy life irreparably. The wilds adjust, recovering with a resilience that feels almost intentional. This resilience is the outcome of countless centuries of silent agreements, a network of understanding that ensures no single force, however destructive, dominates for too long. Rebellion exists here too, but it is constructive, a natural recalibration rather than mindless chaos. Beyond the physical and magical, the pacts of the wilds extend into the realm of emotion and intention. Magic in is often shaped by the feelings and desires of its users, and the wilderness responds accordingly. A creature acting out of anger may provoke consequences, while one acting out of compassion may find unexpected aid. These emotional cues are part of the silent agreements, a reminder that the wilds are sensitive not only to action, but to heart. The forest, the rivers, and the mountains listen as carefully as they react, shaping their responses to the intent behind each gesture. Even the most extraordinary beings, such as Prismo or the cosmic owl, show deference to these pacts when entering untamed regions. Their omnipotence is tempered by an awareness that the wilderness maintains its own laws, independent of any cosmic decree. Wishes, dreams, and interferences are subtly guided to respect the unspoken order, ensuring that balance endures. It is a quiet lesson for all who traverse O. No power, no matter how great, can override the natural agreements that have shaped the land since time immemorial. Through these silent pacts, the wilds of Oo are alive with quiet negotiation and understanding. Boundaries exist, but they are respected rather than enforced. Authority is recognized, but it is not rigid. Even chaos has a place, as long as it contributes to the ongoing rhythm of life. These pacts create a dynamic equilibrium where creatures, elements, and travelers alike interact in ways that sustain the land, enrich its magic, and honor its history. Every action, every choice, every moment of restraint contributes to the survival of the wilderness and to the perpetuation of these timeless agreements. And so, as night falls across the forests, mountains, and hidden valleys of Oo, we can imagine the land breathing softly, alive with unseen conversations and unspoken commitments. Every rustle of leaves, every trickle of water, every distant howl is a testament to the enduring wisdom of these silent pacts, agreements, older than any kingdom, older than any ruler, older even than the remnants of humanity that once sought to dominate this world. These pacts ensure that the wilds remain alive, balanced, and endlessly fascinating. A sanctuary where all beings are held in quiet harmony, bound together by understanding rather than law. As the night deepens in Oo's wilds, the silent pacts reveal their full significance. They are the invisible threads that weave together life, magic, and memory into a living tapestry. Each creature, from the smallest moss-covered critter to the most ancient elemental, knows instinctively that its actions resonate beyond its immediate surroundings. Every footprint, every whispered song, every spark of flame or frost contributes to a delicate equilibrium. The land listens, adjusts, and responds, guiding the interactions of all who dwell within its borders. These pacts are not rigid rules, nor are they burdensome obligations. They are agreements born of experience, trial, and necessity, refined over countless cycles of creation and decay. A forest will grow back after fire, rivers will carve new paths, and creatures will adapt to changes in their environment. Even the most reckless acts of magic or mischief are absorbed and transformed, contributing to the ongoing rhythm of life. The wilderness of Oo teaches that harmony is not achieved by domination, but by attentiveness, respect, and subtle cooperation. There is also an unspoken understanding that every life is interconnected. Predators restrain their hunt to preserve populations. Magical beings temper their power to avoid unnecessary destruction. And wanderers learn to tread lightly. Even when conflict arises, it often carries a hidden lesson, a reminder that imbalance cannot last. Rebellion and aggression are not punished arbitrarily. They are integrated into the flow of life, ensuring that no one force overwhelms another. This is the silent wisdom of the wilds, that freedom and responsibility, risk and restraint, chaos and order are inseparable. The wilds are also a sanctuary for those who seek understanding beyond the reach of kingdoms. Marceline finds solace among ancient trees, Bubblegum sometimes ventures into hidden groves to reflect on her creations, and Finn and Jake discover truths about themselves as they navigate enchanted forests or scale remote peaks. Each interaction with the wilderness is guided by these silent pacts, which reward mindfulness and punish thoughtlessness. Through these unspoken laws, U offers its inhabitants lessons in humility, empathy, and the interconnectedness of all life. Even the supernatural and cosmic forces respect these agreements. The Lich, despite his obsession with annihilation, finds his influence constrained in regions where the wild's pacts are strong. Elemental spirits, ghosts, and magical anomalies respond to the same subtle rules, altering their behavior in accordance with the land's quiet guidance. U's wilds demonstrate that no power, however great, can exist entirely outside the network of balance and reciprocity that binds all things. Authority and defiance, life and death, creation and destruction, all exist in a delicate, perpetual dialogue that sustains the world. The cumulative effect of these agreements is profound. U's wilderness is not simply a backdrop for adventure or chaos. It is a living entity that breathes with intention and awareness. The silent pacts ensure that every action has consequence, yet also that every being, regardless of size or power, has its role. They preserve the possibility of growth, renewal, and wonder, making the wilds a place of perpetual learning and quiet magic. Life in U's untamed spaces thrives not because of force, but because of consent, intuition, and mutual respect. When we think about these pacts in the context of U's kingdoms and civilizations, their importance becomes even clearer. The wilds act as both teacher and safeguard, reminding rulers that power is not absolute, and reminding wanderers that respect is necessary for survival. They preserve history, memory, and life itself, ensuring that chaos never descends into total destruction and that order never becomes oppressive. Through these unspoken agreements, the land maintains a rhythm that is at once invisible and omnipresent, a pulse that echoes through mountains, rivers, and forests alike. Perhaps most beautifully, these pacts remind us that balance is a living, breathing thing. It is negotiated in silence, maintained through instinct, and preserved through generations. The wilds of U do not lecture or dictate, yet their wisdom shapes behavior, fosters alliances, and sustains life in ways that are subtle, gentle, and enduring. Every creature that moves through these spaces participates in this intricate dance, whether it realizes it or not, adding its own energy to the ever-shifting equilibrium of the land. As we imagine the night settling over the forests, rivers, and mountains of U, it is comforting to know that these silent pacts continue without pause. Life carries on, balanced and vibrant, guided by the quiet agreements that predate kingdoms, rulers, and even human memory. They ensure that the wilds remain a sanctuary, a place of learning, reflection, and subtle magic, where every being, no matter how small or fleeting, contributes to the ongoing rhythm of existence. So, as you drift under the soft glow of your own night sky, remember the gentle wisdom of U's wilds. Even in seeming chaos, there is order. Even in silence, there is guidance. And even in the smallest creatures and simplest moments, there is magic. The land continues its quiet work, weaving connection and balance through all things, teaching us that harmony is not a destination, but a journey, lived moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. Good night.